Very much. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday, July 21, 2020 meeting of the Edina City Council. It is a virtual meeting. We're going to talk about how you can participate or where you can find this meeting. But having called the meeting to order, we will now request Sharon Allison, our clerk, to handle roll call. Roll call, please, Ms. Allison.
Member Brindle?
Here.
Member Anderson? Member Anderson, you're muted. You need to unmute. There you go.
Here.
Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Staunton?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. Here. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is the July 21 meeting of the council. The meeting is being held electronically to comply with the governor's Stay Safe MN order and to ensure the safety of all residents and staff. All members of the city council, our staff, and presenters are participating from their homes or their offices. Before we begin the meeting in substance, there's a few things I'd like to cover for those listening in and hoping to participate in portions of the meeting. The city of Edina is committed to continuing to receive and hear your input on matters. We've been collecting public input through our council correspondence web form, or through voicemail, and our engagement website, bettertogetheredina.org. It is important you know that all comments that have been submitted have been received and read prior to the start of the meeting. You do not need to submit the same feedback in another way. All feedback is considered equally, regardless of the way in which it was submitted to the council. Tonight, there'll be two times to call in to provide comment via phone. The first is the community comment portion of the agenda. You'll be allowed to speak about anything that's not on the agenda tonight. Remember, if it's on the agenda tonight, you will not be allowed to speak on it, or if it's scheduled for a future public hearing. Otherwise, you're welcome to make community comment on other matters. The second is opportunity to speak is on public hearings. The agenda has some public hearings shown that we will be dealing with tonight. We're going to be talking about the meeting agenda, and that will take care of a couple of these matters, I believe. But first of all, I would tell you that on the agenda at the present time, with respect to public hearings, on which testimony could at least theoretically be offered, is the drainage right-of-way easement vacation that's proposed at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane and at 4805 Sunny Slope Road. There's a street right-of-way easement vacation proposed at Dugan Plaza, and then the potential sale of city-owned land to the Edina Housing Foundation involving Dugan Plaza. Those things are going to be dealt with shortly, as I mentioned earlier. Zoning ordinance amendment allowing tap rooms and wineries is set for public hearing. That also includes distilleries and cocktail rooms in a planned office district 2, POD 2. So there's a proposal that the zoning ordinance amendment be allowed to have those types of operations in planned office district 2. There's a requested conditional use permit with variance for 4425 Valley View Road. That's a public hearing. And if you want to call in for testimony on any of these matters, you should call 800-374-0221, 800-374-0221. The conference ID number is 289-8269. I'll repeat that. It is 289-8269. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Our city manager, Scott Neal, will time the speakers, and he'll let you know if you go over your 3-minute allocated time for speaking. Remember, you don't necessarily have to call in tonight if you've already provided feedback in writing. That's your choice. Also, do not repeat information already presented. If you can avoid it, we will better off for lack of redundancy. Call in if you have new comments or information to bring forward, though, because we want to make sure we hear that information and hear all the information that's important for us to make a decision. So to make sure residents have a full opportunity to participate on these public hearing matters, we will not act on them tonight. The public hearings will remain open until noon, Wednesday, July 29th. You should all make note of that if you're interested in some of these matters. Noon, Wednesday, July 29th. You can leave a voicemail with your feedback at City Hall, 952-927-8861, or you can submit a comment online at bettertogetheredina.org. Again, that's until noon on Wednesday, July 29th. We thank you in advance for your patience. As we work to conduct this meeting online, we hope we have no technological snafus, but if we do, we'll try to get them fixed as quickly as possible to make sure that we can have the meeting proceed without any glitches. So that is what we need to do to get the meeting started. The next matter we are going to cover is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think my microphone is on and others are muted. I will do the pledge as follows. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we're moving on to the potential approval of the meeting agenda, and Manager Neal has a modification he wishes to make to the agenda. He'll explain that modification.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Staff have been doing additional research at the request of council members and the neighborhood around the Dugan's Plaza matter that's on the agenda for tonight. There are two items that are related that are scheduled for public hearing tonight. One is regarding the sale of the property, and one is regarding the vacating of street right-of-way for the property. We have come upon new information that we need to evaluate that really goes to the heart of whether this proposal is feasible or advisable. So we need some additional time to do that. I'm going to ask the council tonight if you would table both of these public hearings to the August 18th City Council meeting, at which time we'll be able to come back to you with a recommendation and an update on the status of the property and the status of the questions that we're going to research.
All right. Because I know that we have folks from the Dugan Plaza neighborhood, from the Brookview Heights neighborhood, that are probably listening in, wondering whether they're going to have to testify or not. I'd like to deal with these issues now instead of waiting until we get to them in due course. So with respect to item 8A, no, excuse me, 8B and 8D. 8B is the resolution 2020-77, which would theoretically approve the street right-of-way easement vacation at Dugan Plaza. 8D is the public hearing matter involving the potential sale of the city-owned land to the Edina Housing Foundation. Is there a motion to table both of those matters? That would be 8B and 8D until our August 18th, 2020 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Fisher. We got a motion and second to table 8B and 8D until August 18th, 2020. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. With those two matters tabled to August 18th, there will be no public hearing with respect to those two matters this evening. So folks that are listening in from the Dugan Plaza neighborhood who thought they would want to testify one way or the other on these matters, you don't have to worry about this coming on the agenda tonight. So we will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda with respect to the balance of the agenda, the amended agenda, with the exclusion of 8B and 8D, which have been continued to August 18th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and second to approve the amended agenda with the exception of 8B and 8D, which have been moved to August 18th, 2020. Any further discussion? All those in favor of, we'll now vote on the adoption of the amended agenda as stated. Roll call, please.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The amended agenda is adopted. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. One of our residents, Wade Thoman, Thommen, was really instrumental, I think, in accessing the electronic files of the city and found these deeds with deed restrictions that caused us to postpone this matter, these two matters, until the 18th of August. I want to do a shout out for Wade working with staff And Wade also comments that he couldn't believe how a great a job we had done as a city in setting up that electronic capability to be able to access materials all the way back to 1990. So thank you, Wade, for working with the city on that matter. All right, and then we'll get to the end of the agenda. I want to talk a little bit about due process when we get to mayor's comments and council comments with respect to the Dugan Plaza matter. I think we could have done a better job on due process in terms of notifying folks in the broader neighborhood about this matter. I want to discuss that at the council level too. So having said that, we're going to move on to community comment. But before we do that, before we hear from residents who would like to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda or scheduled for a future public hearing, you can now call in at 800-374-0221. Again, that same conference ID number, 289-8269. An operator will ask for your name and the street address, and they'll put you in the queue to speak. And you'll be given 3 minutes to speak in community comment, and City Manager Scott Neal will time the speakers, and he'll let you know when you are at the 3-minute mark. So we have a little bit of delay in the broadcast. Our communications director, Jennifer Benarott, will be assisting us as we queue up folks that wish to make community comment on issues that are not in front of the council this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. Is there anyone in the queue, Director Benarott, that wishes to speak to the council about a matter of concern to them?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. We do have a handful of people on our intercall tonight, but as of right now, we have just one lined up to speak. Operator, will you please unmute Peter's line? Peter, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your last name, so if you could begin by clearly stating your full name and address, your 3 minutes will begin after that. Go ahead. Denfeld, will you please unmute the intercall line so we can hear Peter?
Peter's line is now open.
Thank you.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Peter Telepis. I live at 5101 Abercrombie Drive here in Edina. And I'd like to begin my comment just by opening with an apology for my erroneous email sent this morning. So I humbly apologize and ask for everybody's forgiveness for any inappropriate comments or descriptions or disclosures or anything. It was a complete misfire, and I humbly ask your apology. With regard to the conveyance of the land to the Edina Housing Foundation and also the vacation of right-of-way, I want to begin, Mr. Mayor, by thanking you for acknowledging how this could have been handled better and communicated with the neighborhood to create, a cohesive environment and a solution-oriented type of approach and treating the neighborhood as stakeholders. And I look forward to future communications in the future. I would like to object on the record to the order to vacate the right-of-way. And I'd like to also object on the record to the conveyance of the parcel of Dugan Plaza to the Edina Housing Foundation. My reasons are simply
Mr. Solepis, I'm going to interrupt you there because this matter is coming back in front of us on the 18th. So it is a future matter that we're going to be taking testimony on. That would be the appropriate time for you to be offering your thoughts with respect to this matter, if it even comes up in the same form. So I'm going to ask you not to testify further with regard to something that is potentially set for a future public hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my comment.
Thank you.
You can move on to the next person. Thank you.
Council members, we do not currently have anyone else in the queue to speak. I would remind those who are on intercall, if you would like to speak or provide community comment, about something not on tonight's agenda or planned for a future public hearing, please press star 1 right now to get in the queue. Otherwise, council, I would recommend that you wait a minute or so just in case others are calling in. There is a very slight delay in the broadcast and we want to make sure we don't miss anyone. Okay, we have someone else ready to go. Operator, will you please unmute Andy Brown's line? Andy, please begin by stating your full name and address.
Andy Brown, 5512 Park Place in Edina. Just wanted to comment on a couple things. Wanted to hear where we stand with a fire station in the northeast side of town regarding that, especially for the response times, especially hoping that we're still a premier suburb. And then the second thing would be what's the situation with fiber in the city of Edina? Again, going back to a premier type suburb, with everybody working at home still and for probably at least another year. It seems to me that I paid a rather substantial amount for street reconstruction and was disappointed back then when we didn't have fiber, but boy, it sure is even worse now. The third thing is I listened into the earlier pre-meeting regarding the speeds, and I do understand everybody's worried about speeding in the neighborhoods. However, I would like to mention 3 things that happened to me in the last 3 days of driving just routine little errands around Edina. In order to get my son this evening from daycare on Valley View Road, heading south, I encountered a bicyclist, a man of middle-aged age, who insisted on going north in the southbound lane of Valley View Road, right by the Edina pool. Last Sunday, right around church time, right by 50th and Wooddale, heading south, another gentleman on a bicycle decided to blow through the stoplight at 50th and Wooddale. And then on the way home from collecting Devani's dinner tonight before this meeting, I was on 55th Street heading towards Park Place, heading home from Devani's with a pizza, and there was a 3-year-old toddler, unmonitored by a parent, literally in the middle of the road on a tricycle. So while I do appreciate the effort of going from 30 to 20, if people aren't attentive to what they're doing and where they're going, it doesn't really matter when I'm behind my Ford Explorer, which weighs, 2 tons. So it's pretty disturbing, the level of entitlement that's going on in Edina. And so it's not just motorists that need education, it's the bicyclist community, it's the pedestrian community. And I really don't know how this is going to be enforceable. And I'm pretty disappointed in the council on a lot of these issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Next up, we have Marta Korwowski. Operator, will you please unmute Marta's line? Marta, then please begin by stating your full name and address.
Hello, my address is on Danan's Drive in Edina.
You're cutting out. Would you give us your name again?
Can you hear me? Yes. Can you hear me any better now?
That's a little better, I think.
Okay. Sorry about that. My name is Marta Karwowski, and my address is 5101 Danan's Drive in Edina, Minnesota. And my comment actually references the Dugan Plaza parcel, which I know is rescheduled, and I will clarify my objections at the later hearing. But I just wanted to mention to City Council that conservation really matters too. I know a lot of people want to develop that parcel and just development in general of land. And I just would like the City Council to know that open spaces, public parks, and just conservation where people can just have green space is very important. And not every parcel has to be developed. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.
Don't have anyone else in the queue right now. Callers, please remember to press star 1 if you would like to make a community comment at this time. Otherwise, council, I would recommend you wait just a minute or so in case we have other callers trying to join in. With that, I have Richard Strong ready to speak. Operator, please unmute Richard's line. And Richard, please begin by stating your full name and address.
Hello, my name is Richard Strong. I live at 6112 St. John's Avenue, Edina, and I've lived in the community for the last 25 years. And one thing I've noticed that around shopping areas, there's been more and more development, and being a person that believes that we can walk to drugstores and grocery stores and banks and pharmacies, I think the higher density development around these shopping centers and grocery stores are a great idea. I noticed on France Avenue, Farley's has built quite a few multifamily buildings around their grocery store. I think it's good for the residents, and I think it's good for the commercial areas to have such higher densities around their area. In fact, I think when Southdale was originally viewed by the developer, that he thought there would be more high density around the shopping center. So I think this is a very, very good development to have in Edina, and I support this development.
Well, thank you, Mr. Strong.
Council, I don't have anyone else in the queue at this time. Callers, please remember to press *1 if you're interested in speaking with the council. Otherwise, I would recommend you wait just a moment or so before moving on in case we have any last-minute community commenters.
Thank you, Director Benrut. We'll wait for your signal to proceed to the next portion of the agenda.
I think it's safe for you to move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you, Director Benrut. The next portion relates to community comment, and that's the city manager's response to community comments. Manager Neal, I can't recall when we met last in June, we took a meeting off because of the 4th of July holiday. Were there any comments you needed to respond to?
There were actually. There were three community comments offered at City Council's last council meeting, which was on July 16th. Two of those comments concerned an item that's on your agenda tonight, and that's the proposed intersection improvements at Creek Valley Road and Tracy Avenue, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later in this meeting. The other was a comment regarding Grandview and the possible redevelopment of the city's former public works maintenance facility, and encouraging the council to remember the future of that site, especially as it relates to the possibility of future rail service at that site, and to keep that in mind as we plan for the redevelopment of that entire area. But most specifically, that particular parcel.
All right, good. Thank you. Did that prompt any questions in anyone's mind on the council that they wanted to inquire of regarding Director Neal, Manager Neal? Okay, thank you. All right, the next matter on the agenda is the consent agenda. I know I've gotten two council members who had wanted to pull items from the consent agenda, items 6I and 6L. I is the Rosland Park Stormwater Filtration Vault Project. And then L, I think I wanted to pull that one. I think Member Anderson wanted to pull that one as well. And Member Fisher wanted to pull 6I. Is there anyone else on the council that wishes to have an item pulled from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Anderson.
I'm pulling not only L, but M and N. I kind of see those as linked. So I would propose pulling all three of those out.
Okay, very good. All right, with the exception of 6I, L, M, and N, is there a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right. I got a motion and a second by members Staunton and Fisher with regard to adopting the consent agenda with the exception of items 6I, L, M, and N. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda with the exception of items 6I, L, M, and N, say aye. Or no, excuse me. Roll call, please.
Member Brindle.
All right. Can't break those old habits.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. All right, the consent agenda is adopted with the exception of items 6I, L, M, and N, and we will now go through those individually. And the first one we'll look at is 6I, and that is Member Fisher. That is the proposed Rosland Park Stormwater Filtration Vault Project. Member Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the reason I wanted to pull this from the consent agenda is we're not really taking an action tonight. It's really alerting us that a contract is going to be coming to us at our next meeting. But I received some correspondence from a resident who lives up on Lake Otto, which is just north of Crosstown. And to be honest, I wouldn't have known the names of any of these water bodies until this little issue came up. But one of the concerns is the watershed district, they had a meeting about a week ago, and several residents of Lake Otto attended the meeting, but were not aware that you had to register ahead of time to be able to speak. So they were able to listen. They weren't able to necessarily participate through no fault of anybody's necessarily. But so the concern is that there's some technical issues here about the drawing down water level of Lake Otto by doing this project. And by the way, this project seems terrific, and I'm excited about it. But I want to make sure before we get into approving a contract potentially at our next council meeting that perhaps, and I've talked to Chad a little bit earlier today about this, that perhaps we could get a little bit more explanation about the technical aspects, and maybe I would like to have some assurance that the good things potentially that we're going to do downstream don't have a negative impact upstream on the property owners that way. And just that's, there's some technical aspects to this, and I don't know when the best time to go through that. Maybe it's at the next meeting, but I just wanted to make everyone aware of that it's not quite as easy as what I might have thought when I just read the information in the packet.
Good. Thank you for that alert. Having provided that information, Member Fisher, would you care to move item 6I?
Well, I guess I would just ask if, because I did talk to Mr. Milner today, if he's got anything he would like to add, maybe give him an opportunity to do that, and any suggestion about, what he's thinking.
All right. Director Milner, I thought that might be premature, but you let us know.
Yep, I would just welcome the ability to have Councilmember Fisher to send those residents to me and Ross. And we'll talk about those technical questions that those individuals may have before the next meeting. That'll give us an opportunity to see what concerns they have, and we can bring those answers back to the council in either a staff report or bring it out of the consent next time and talk with the council on some of those concerns. And I think one of them is the drawdown of Lake Otto. It's going to be, right now it's designed to be 3 inches lower. And the reason for that is to use Lake Otto as a holding pond after it rains so we can treat more stormwater. Otherwise the system turns on only during those small rain events. So since the individuals weren't able to speak at the watershed meeting, we could potentially ask somebody from the watershed to help answer those questions or even be available at the next council meeting. It is a great project. It's going to remove phosphorus from water before it gets in Lake Cornelia and directly benefit those algae blooms that we've seen the last few years. So this just goes to that strategy of continuing to try to improve lake water quality for Lake Cornelia. The watershed is also planning to look at some treatments for phosphorus in Lake Otto and in Nancy, and they're going to do those studies in 2021. So we're not forgetting about these lakes north of Highway 62. We're just starting down near Lake Cornelia first.
Yeah, and to be clear, the folks that I talk to are just they're as excited about cleaning up these lakes as anybody, and we just want to make sure everyone's on board and understanding the impacts. And I think that's a good suggestion, Mr. Milner. If we could get them to come in and meet with you, and if there's somebody from the watershed that could be there, and they could get informed, and then it'll help us when you bring it at our next meeting. I think to get a full understanding of what those impacts are.
Yep, and if the council has any questions before then, please let me know and we can directly address those too with the next action on August 5th.
And to be clear, there was no real action on this item tonight. This was informational, correct?
Correct.
So
do
what
we
is,
really have to move it?
yeah, what is the motion?
No, this was strictly informational to give you awareness of the project.
I think a motion to accept the information, accept the staff report, I think, because it involves the staff report and also the Watershed District Board meeting minutes, and we may need those for the record.
All right, I'll make that motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a good question, incidentally. We got a motion second to adopt 6I. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. 6I is adopted. And now we're on to 6L, M, and N. Member Anderson wish to discuss those in concert, and I think it's probably a good idea since L relates to M and N and vice versa. Member Anderson, let us have your thoughts on these particular items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items L, M, and N on the consent agenda reference the use of the Federal CARES Act allocation of the City of Edina. CARES Act provides emergency assistance and healthcare response for individuals, families, and businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The plan to implement the use of those funds will provide a significant benefit for our town, and I wanted to give Manager Neal the opportunity to explain the high points of the plan. There's some, I think, terrific elements in it, and so I was hoping for a little expansion on that so that our residents can know what we're doing.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Manager Neal, the city's received $3.985 million in federal CARES Act funding, and the staff has been thinking carefully about this. Would you walk us through what your recommendations are?
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of council. I will do that. As you noted, the state of Minnesota adopted an appropriation strategy for city governments in the state of allocating a per capita amount of money, which was a subrecipient. So we're a subrecipient of federal dollars. And so we received $76 per capita. All cities across the state received that amount. Our $76 per capita generated $3.985 million, so $3,985,000. And we have quite a number of rules and guidance that we have to work under in terms of distributing this money. So the first thing we have to do is find what our eligible expenses are. And so what we've put together here is really a broad plan to allocate these dollars in the community in such a way that they provide benefit to the community, both directly and indirectly, by helping us cover some of our unanticipated COVID-19 costs. So the proposal that I have submitted to you tonight includes 4 different broad expenditures. One is to recharge our emergency rental assistance program. The council earlier this year approved a $100,000 allocation to VEEP to operate a emergency rental assistance program for us. I'm proposing that we allocate $500,000 to that program as a second round of funding. Very similar to that is the council had previously allocated $100,000 earlier this year to an emergency small business assistance program. I'm proposing that we allocate $500,000 to that program as well. We've had some discussion about the feasibility of putting together a community testing program. Some communities have already done this in the United States. We have had some discussion with mHealth Fairview. They are interested and excited about the opportunity to do that in Edina. I talked with their local leadership today. So we've allocated $250,000 toward that kind of program or event or series of events. We need to kind of work through what that will eventually be. And finally, the balance of that. So the balance is about 70% of our total allocation, or $2.7 million, to cover internal COVID-19 unanticipated costs. So these are probably mostly personnel costs that we didn't anticipate, that we've had to incur during the year. It could be extra human resources costs, it's extra facilities costs, anything. There's a broad guidance of what we can apply this money to. So Don Urim is learning a lot about that. He's our point guy on this, like a lot of finance directors are. And so he's constantly getting new guidance about what qualifies and what doesn't. But we would use that balance of that money to cover those costs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. These are the broad goals of this program. When we get closer to the end of it, where we're actually getting our justification ready to submit to the state, we would share that with the council as well.
Thank you, Manager Neal. Member Anderson, did you have some follow-on comment or questions about any of these proposed categories of spending?
No, sir. I was just very interested in an explanation or an expansion on the plan, or at least the introduction of the plan. I think it's a good one. I think it'll, again, just have significant benefit to our community.
Thank you. I think our council did terrific work early on with respect to recognizing the need for emergency rental assistance and emergency small business assistance. I really like the idea of this community testing program being done in conjunction with Fairview mHealth. I think we all saw in the paper last week where they now say they've got some testing abilities that are quick in terms of being able to get the test performed and also being able to get the results. So that's a good thing. I just wanted to relate to the council as we think about how to allocate this $3.9 million plus dollars. Manager Neal and I had a phone conversation with Fairview Systems about 2 weeks ago, and they called us to tell us about all the work they were doing that was COVID related. And I think we all recognize that Bethesda Hospital in St. Paul has been the primary caregiver for folks that had to go into the hospital or into the ICU for COVID related illness. There's one other backup hospital in the Fairview system in St. Paul, and then, of course, Fairview Southdale was the third backup if they needed it, and they prepped it accordingly over in the ER. What they called to tell us was that because of the fact that they've been spending all of this time commitment and monetary commitment to treating COVID-related problems, they did recognize that they were getting compensated somewhat by the federal government, but because they could not do elective surgeries and other procedures that they would normally do because of their concentration on assisting on COVID-related disease issues for residents of Minnesota, they had lost $32 million, and they were able to recover $6 million from the from the federal government. They got $6 million, leaving them about $26 million in the hole, so to speak. And what they were candidly wondering about and musing about was whether or not, when we entertained how to use that $3.9 million, whether or not we would consider allocating any of those monies to them. And I will tell you that over the years that I've been mayor, I think they've been one of the finest, if not the finest, corporate citizen that we've had here. They're our largest employer. Whenever we've asked them to do something community related, they've stepped right up. And I know that we're thinking that if we have some funds left over, we'd allocate it to them. But I'm wondering if in the scheme of thinking about helping with rental assistance and helping with small businesses in our community, if we shouldn't also be thinking about whether or not we want to extend a financial hand and give a little help to the Fairview Systems as part of our allocation process. what they told us was that because they serve primarily Edina, Richfield, Bloomington, and Eden Prairie residents, if we would lead the way with respect to a COVID-related donation, and it's an allowable expense, I believe, that then they would go pro rata to the other cities based on population that they serve at the hospital. So if half of their population is Edina and the other half of the population comes from those other three cities, they would roughly then allocate accordingly and go to those other cities and say, could you provide a pro rata amount of money to what Edina provided for to us so that we could help a little bit with this overall debt problem that we've got because of COVID and the lack of ability to do elective surgeries. I thought it was a conversation worth having with our council members as we think about how to use that 2.7 million roughly, I think, that remains after our allocations for those other categories of worthwhile expenses, if we shouldn't also be thinking about the hospital and remind ourselves what a valuable thing it is for us to have a regional medical center in our community headquartered here, and as I mentioned earlier, what a great corporate citizen they've been, and to show them that it is indeed a two-way street, that we appreciate them as well, and try to help them out in some form or fashion. I don't have any sense of what might be appropriate if we did think as a council we want to extend some financial assistance to them as well, but I at least wanted to broach the topic with all of you so that we could talk it through. Anyone have any comments or thoughts?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Staunton?
So one of the questions in my mind is, this round of funding seems to me to be supportive of state and local governments. And I know we have done, and I've been supportive of our funding of BEEP as well as small businesses in the community. But I'm wondering in the big picture, and Scott, maybe you can be helpful on this in terms of what are the other avenues of relief that various businesses are getting? Because, I know there's been a lot of discussion, rightfully so, about the impacts that state and local government has suffered as a result of the pandemic. But if we're taking in the money and then giving it out to other businesses or other entities within the community, what does that say about our needs as a city as well? And I just don't understand well enough what the rules are in terms of that and what other opportunities there are for somebody like Fairview.
Manager Neal?
Yes, Councilmember Staunton, members of council. I think that's part of the concern that I would have in giving a direct appropriation to Fairview. They are a very large entity. Providing any sort of if we gave them all of our CARES dollars, it still wouldn't have a very big impact on their bottom line. And we don't know that they are not in the running for additional funds from state or federal government on the next round of a CARES or CARES-like program. So I would not recommend that at this point. We have been so immersed in trying to understand our own situation that I don't really have a lot of information that I could share with you about the business community. I know that there are their own separate programs that they have access to, whether it's the PPP or if it's direct appropriations to other kinds of businesses. But we have been really focused on the CARES grant for city governments for a long time because it was held up at the state level. One of the issues with the money at this point is that we have a limited window in which we can spend it. And that window opened already in March and it closes, Don Urim, if you could help me, it closes in November or December?
It closes on November 15th.
November 15th. So the longer we wait to make this decision, the less time we have to use the money in the community. And we need to actually spend it. So any money that is unexpended by that time period, by the end of that window, we have to give back to the state. So that's what I could tell you about CARES grant money for us.
So if I could just ask a follow-up, so is this expense related or revenue replacement?
It is almost exclusively expense related. So that's been one of the big issues with regards to CARES funding for city governments, is that for most city governments, most of our pain has been actually on the revenue side, especially when you look at our Parks and Rec enterprises. This money is not directly attributable to the revenue side. It's directly attributable to the expense side. Now, it's money, it's fungible, so there could be some ways internally to benefit some of those parts of our organization that have had revenue losses as the money comes in and kind of churns through our system. But it is directly attributable to expenses.
And from an expense perspective, would that also apply to recipients who we might contribute it to, like Fairview, if we were to do that?
If we allocate the money, and I'll ask Don if he can jump in here too, but my understanding is that if we allocate this money to our small business program or to the rental assistance program, the act of allocating it to them is a spend for us. But we need to get it into their hands so that they can spend it too.
But in terms of Fairview, I mean, I understand in the healthcare system, a lot of the issue is similar to the state and local government in that it's a revenue issue. They have had revenue losses as a consequence of this. And I'm sure there's cost expense side as well, but there's a huge revenue loss. I think the mayor articulated it pretty well.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm wondering if they have to give, if we were to give them some money, do they have to identify expenses as opposed to revenue losses?
I'm not able to answer that for you tonight because we didn't investigate that potential option.
Director Urim has his finger up.
Yeah, Mayor and members of the City Council. So if we allocated funds to Fairview, they would be a sub-recipient of our CARES Act money, which means that they would have to meet all the requirements that we have to meet. So they would have to show expenditures.
Okay. And maybe for that small amount, it's a big amount, but a small amount in the grand scheme for them, maybe they would be able to cover that. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, you had more conversations with me.
Yeah, you've raised a good distinguishing point, and that is that what they described to us were revenue losses, and they had not, I think they had not computed their actual costs related to COVID the last time we talked to them. And I think it's fair to state, too, that from a federal standpoint, there is some legislation in the Congress that may deal with some of these issues from a medical provider standpoint, but I can't tell you where it is or whether they'd receive any funds from it. But it was something I thought it was important to address since they had requested us to do so.
Well, and one more follow-up question. Manager Neal, you're making a proposal for how to allocate this funding, and we have to expend it by November 15th. But if the needs shift or the demands shift, can we modify this between now and November 15th?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say if it changes, if the guidance changes or clarifies about what we can count as an eligible expense, and we don't have enough eligible expense to cover 2.7, we may actually want to spend the money in a different way to reallocate it before we have to give it back. I'd much prefer that. I'd much prefer to deploy it in the community somewhere than to return it back to the state and to the federal government after that.
Yeah, because one of the questions I had, I think 500,000 for VEAP and 500,000 for small businesses is good, but who knows? Maybe, 2 or 3 months from now, they may need even more. And maybe by then we'll know more also about where Fairview's at on alternative avenues of assistance.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, I think knowing that we have that flexibility between now and November 15th with respect to these funds is helpful. And I think I'd at least be comfortable with Member Staunton leading the way on his questioning, leading us down the pathway of thinking, okay, we're going to put 2.7 million, we're going to allocate it into the general fund for now, but if we have to get at it for costs that are COVID related, that are in excess of what we have ourselves, we can think about allocating it out into the community in whatever way we determine would be appropriate. So I'm comfortable going with the decision that we potentially would make tonight with respect to L, M, and N in part 6 of the agenda. And Member Anderson, I think you indicated earlier you were comfortable as well.
I am.
All right. Member Anderson, would you move L, M, and N, please?
Move to approve consent agenda items L, M, and N, sir.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Fisher. We've got a motion and a second to approve agenda items. Is that 6? Yeah, 6, L, M, and N. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just a quick comment.
Member Brindle.
And that is the idea of including Fairview Southdale or M Health Fairview Southdale in this. I would need more information in order to know. And it leads to what Member Staunton was talking about. What are the other funding sources that might be available to them? I don't wish them any hardship, but I would need more information than just what we have tonight.
Thank you. All right. Any further comments? Roll call, please, on the adoption of L, M, and N from part 6 of the agenda.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The matters 6, L, M, and N are approved. There was one other thing I thought we should just touch on before we left this portion of the agenda, and that was the resolution accepting donations. That was approved, and I just thought we should recognize these folks verbally. 2 donations to the Park and Rec Department. Dr. Hannelore Brucker, that those of us in Rotary have come to know her. She's a new Rotary member. She's donated $350 for a tree. And then Carol Burmaster, a lovely gift of $3,200 for a donated bench for a loved one. So thank you to those 2 residents of Edina for those particular gifts to the Park and Rec Department. And then on to special recognitions and presentations. We have one matter in that portion of the agenda this evening, and it is a proclamation involving Human Rights and Relations and the Human Rights and Relations Commission's 50th anniversary. And we've got Vice Chair Michael Epstein here to accept the proclamation. And I will read the Human Rights and Relations Commission 50th anniversary proclamation, and it reads as follows. Whereas in 1955, the Minnesota State Commission Against Discrimination was established to protect the rights of Minnesota residents. And whereas in 1967, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights was founded to succeed the State Commission Against Discrimination to have an official body to handle violations of civil rights. And whereas on July 10, 1970, the City of Edina established the Human Rights Commission, later changed to the Human Rights and Relations Commission, to support state human rights efforts. The Commission works to make sure all who live, work, study, or visit Edina have freedom from discrimination because of race, color, creed, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender expression, marital status, disability, status with regard to public assistance, familial status, or national origin in connection with employment, housing and real property, public accommodations, public services, credit, and education, per the city code. The Commission makes recommendations and implements programs of education and action designed to strengthen human rights and relations in the City of Edina. And whereas in the past 50 years, the Edina Human Rights and Relations Commission has achieved the following. And there's a series of bullet points here, all important. Given an annual award named for Edina resident and longtime commission member Tom Oy to a member of the Edina community who demonstrated achievements in human rights. Held an annual commemoration of the Holocaust and other mass atrocities to honor survivors, witnesses, rescuers, and the memories of those who are no longer with us. Engaged the community in conversations about critical issues to us all, such as religious intolerance, racial equity, and mental health. Became a human rights city, using the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a guide in all city policies and activities, and commemorates every December 10th as City of Edina Human Rights Day. Supported CEDAW, CEDAW, the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and resolves to end violence and discrimination against women and girls. Supported a domestic partner ordinance and gay marriage. Created a policy to address bias offenses and to prevent hate and acts of discrimination in the City of Edina. Supported the expansion of affordable housing opportunities in Edina, and advocated for the inclusion of human rights as an important topic in the city's comprehensive plan and in all areas of city strategy and operations. Now, therefore, I, James B. Hovland, Mayor of Edina, recognize the achievement of those commissions, many members, in a half-century of work to promote human rights for all who live, work, study, and visit Edina. We have reaffirmed the city's commitment to maintaining Edina as an inclusive, welcoming city for all. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Second by Member Fisher. Motion by Member Brindle. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to potential adoption of the proclamation. Clerk Allison.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The proclamation for the Human Rights and Relations Commission celebrating their 50th anniversary is adopted. Vice Chair Epstein, would you care to comment at all?
Just very briefly, Mayor, thank you so much. You really said it all when you read that list to us. I wish I could sit here and name all the names of the members of the Human Rights and Relations Commission who have worked so hard over the last 50 years. Their work was outstanding. I'd also like to mention the Race and Equity Task Force in conjunction with that, who did amazing work. It's incredible what's happened over Edina over the last 50 years, and I think they were ahead of their time in 1970 to start this commission. But with current events and the way things are going now, it's obvious that our work is not done, and we have more to do now than ever. And so our commission takes this work very seriously. And the timing of this 50th proclamation is apt for that. So on behalf of the commission, I want to thank you, Mayor, and all the members of council for adopting this now.
Thank you, Vice Chair Epstein. Vice Chair Epstein, would you comment? We did approve a change in your commission work plan, and it's because you've got some important work to do, as you mentioned. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're embarking on as the Human Rights and Relations Commission on behalf of the residents of Edina?
Yes, we're going to specifically hold a forum for the residents to have the ability to voice concerns and topics that concern specifically the incident, of course, with George Floyd, but policing in the city, safety in the city, and race relations in the city. And so that's work that we're doing now. And thank you for adopting that this evening. I know it was part of the group of items that you did, but we changed our work plan specifically because we know how serious the work we have ahead of us is, and we wanted that to happen right away. So that's great that we got to change our 2020 work plan.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Epstein. Any questions or comments from council members related to this matter? Questions
No,
for Vice
just,
Chair Epstein? Member Brindle?
Thank you. So I spent some time on the Human Rights and Relations Commission. It was actually at the time that we changed the name of the commission from the Human Relations Commission to Human Rights and Relations. It's one way or the other. But anyway, it became the HRRC. And there were a lot of things that happened in that time. We created the Tom Oy Award, the Domestic Partners Ordinance, I think was right at the end of that, or toward the beginning of time that I was on council. But it's just great work being done on behalf of the citizens of Edina, and not just the people who live here. It's the people who work here. It's the people who go to school here, and anyone who really regards Edina as a place they would like to be for whatever reason they're here. So thank you very much for what you're about to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brindle. And I would echo what Member Brindle has said. We really look forward to this work that you're about to embark on, and I think it's really critically important work for our community. So thanks for that undertaking.
Thank you all.
All right. We're going to move on now to public hearings. And the first matter we have before us tonight is a potential approval of a drainage right-of-way, an easement vacation at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane, and Director Milner has this matter.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. Should be sharing my screen now. So yes, we'll have you consider the vacation of easements at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane, embodied in Resolution 2020-76. This is the existing and proposed easement. So the green line is the existing easements. You can see there's a new home being constructed and the easements go right through the home. This green line is not consistent with the easements on the adjoining properties. So they asked to vacate everything in the green easement area, and they've offered to give us new ones on the red line that's consistent with adjacent easements. Xcel Energy needs this little corner up near the north portion to stay as is, and we've got that in the description. So the city, we have no issues with this change of easements. The only comments we got from private utilities was Xcel needing that extra 15 feet at the north end, and that's encompassed in the descriptions. We would recommend vacating this requested easement and approve Resolution 2020-76 contingent on new easements. Then I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Director Milner with respect to this proposed easement vacation? Director Milner, do you know if there is anyone representing 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane that is in attendance this evening that wishes to speak to this issue?
Not unless they called in on their own on the call-in line, but not that I'm aware of.
All right. So having no questions for Director Milner from the council members, I'm going to open this matter up for public testimony. It is a public hearing. And if you wish to testify regarding this matter, we have talked about the number that you need to be calling. It is 800-374-0221, and the conference ID number is 289-8269, 289-8269. You'll get an operator. You'll give them your name and address, and then you'll be put into the queue, and then Director Benarott will call on you as you are ready to testify. Is there anyone on the line, Director Benarott?
We do have 3 people on the call right now, but none have indicated a desire to provide testimony in this matter. Callers, please remember that if you would like to provide testimony, you must press star or asterisk and then the number 1 on your telephone keypad to get in the queue. I'm still not seeing anyone, council members, but I would recommend you wait a minute or so in case we have other people trying to call in.
All right, and I'll remind folks of the number. It's 800-374-0221, and the conference ID is 289-8269. And as we mentioned earlier, whether it's for this matter or a subsequent matter, those folks that are listening in, an operator will ask for your name and address and put you in the queue to speak, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Remember that you'll be able to offer testimony, and then Manager Neal will let you know when you go over time. All right. Director Benarott, anyone in the queue?
No, there's no one in the queue.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing in this matter?
So moved.
Moved by Member Brindle that we close the public hearing. Is there a second by Member Anderson?
Second.
Sure. Okay. All right, we've got a motion and second to close the public hearing with regard to the prospective easement vacation at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane. Roll call, please, with respect to closing the public hearing.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. Next, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-76, which approves the drainage right-of-way easement vacation as described by Director Milner at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane?
So moved.
All right, Member Brindle moves.
Second.
Member Fisher seconds. Any further
Actually-
discussion?
Mr. Mayor, can I clarify what that motion was just a while ago? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it clearly.
Oh, certainly. It is a resolution, it is a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-76, which would approve the drainage right-of-way and the easement of the vacation of the easement at 6,000 Fox Meadow Lane.
So for clarity, actually the motion is to close the public hearing at noon, July 29th, and to continue the action on the item to August 5th, unless you'd like to change that.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Good catch, Sharon.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just wondering if, in the absence of, we've been through this conversation before, but I think Clerk Allison is raising a very good point. Should we, I think we should, though there were no testifiers, I think we should stick with our process that we've adopted in the virtual world we've been operating in. So the motion, let's see, would Member Brindle, were you the maker of the motion to close the public hearing?
I was.
Just thinking of withdrawing that motion and restating the motion.
All right.
Member, you're comfortable with withdrawing the second?
Who made the second? Was it me?
I think
Member
so.
Anderson.
So Member Anderson, withdraw the second?
Yes.
All right. Member Brindle, you want to restate the motion? Or Clerk Allison, do you want to restate the motion?
Motion to close the public hearing at noon, July 29th, and to continue action on the item to the August 5th City Council meeting.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing at noon, July 29th, and continue the action on the item to the August 5th City Council meeting? Member Brindle, you want to move it?
Yes, I will move it.
Second.
Member Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call with respect to the motion as stated.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. We have removed 8B from the agenda. It is being tabled and it will be dealt with on August 18th. And now we are moving on to Roman 8C, which is the potential drainage right-of-way easement vacation at 4805 Sunny Slope Road. And Director Milner has this matter as well. Director Milner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Another easement vacation request from 4805 Sunny Slope Road, embodied in Resolution 2020-78. This is the existing easements. You can see how the existing storm sewer easement extends into the property. They would like to do some improvements to their property. There is a storm pipe that's located in that easement area. And you can see that here where the catch basin is proposed to be removed. The pipe is going to be shortened. They are going to do all that work and provide new easements on their property in that shortened state. So we're still going to have the stormwater system will still act in the same way it does today for these backyard systems. It just allows them to develop a little bit more of their property. You can see the changes here on this slide. We don't have any issues. The private utilities don't have any issues either. We would recommend vacating this, and we would look for the same motion that you just passed to continue this public hearing and consider approval of this resolution at the August 5th City Council meeting. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Director Milner regarding this matter? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public testimony. Is there anyone who wishes to testify with respect to this matter of potentially approving the drainage right-of-way easement vacation at 4805 Sunny Slope Road?
Yes, Your Honor. I have Stephen Snyder on the line. Operator, will you please open Stephen's line? Then, Stephen, please begin by stating your full name and address.
Yes, this is Steve Snyder. My wife and I live at 4804 East Sunny Slope Road.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Go ahead.
We are the lot that shares the backyard boundary. We share a backyard boundary with that location on West Sunny Slope that is seeking this vacation. Our neighborhood generally has issues with a high water table. Most of us have sump pumps that are running. We've had some problems with some of our trees that have been drowned out when the water table is high and had to be replaced. So I had a concern about the vacation of the storm sewer easement and whether that would aggravate the situation of the water flowing into our yard. I had the opportunity to speak today with the graduate engineer, Ms. Marquez, from the city engineer's office. She was very helpful. She addressed my different concerns. She explained that this simply involved moving the catch basin to a different location. She said that it was designed that there would not be any increase in water flowage off the property onto neighboring properties. And she also assured me that the front yard would still drain toward the street opposite us and not back into our yard to add to the water we already have. So based on that assurance, we are not objecting to this request for the vacation of the easement. We'll rely on the city engineer's office to make sure that that with their inspection that the project does comply with the specification for it, and that there will not be an increase in water runnage or water running off the property into neighbor properties, including ours.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the queue, Director Benarott?
No, we do not have anyone else in the queue at this time. I would recommend you wait just a second in case we get a new caller.
We'll wait for your further advice.
Safe to move on now.
All right, thank you. Council members, is there a motion with respect to Resolution 2020-78, which would potentially vacate the drainage and utility easement at 4805 Sunny Slope Road West, to close the public hearing at noon, July 29th, and continue action on the item to the August 5th City Council meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Brindle.
Second.
Member Fisher seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, on the motion as stated.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The motion is approved, and the matter regarding Resolution 2020-78, which is a potential vacation of the drainage and utility easement at 4805 Sunny Slope Road West, will be continued. The public hearing will be continued until noon on July 29th, and we will continue this matter for action on the item at the August 5th City Council meeting. All right, the next matter is 8D, and that has been removed from the agenda and tabled until August 18th. And then on to item E, which is ordinance 2020-09, Director Teague has this matter, and this is a potential approval of a first reading on a zoning ordinance amendment allowing tap rooms, wineries, distilleries, and cocktail rooms in the POD planned office district. Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this ordinance before you, as mentioned, is an amendment that would allow these types of uses in the POD 2 zoning district. The purpose of the request is the applicant, Eric Anderson, who is on the call with us this evening, is wanting to locate a distillery at 7201 Metro Boulevard. That's the former Regis office site, located just west of Highway 100, south of 70th, this general location. As most of as the council recalls, back in 2015, and went into effect the first of the year in 2016, the city adopted an ordinance that would allow these types of uses in our industrial districts. So the industrial districts are on the map on the screen are all the properties that are yellow. So there's several along Highway 169. There is the Pentagon Park or Cahill Industrial District, south of 70th, north of I-494, and the Pentagon Park area. There's also, of course, the Public Works site in the Grandview District is also zoned planned industrial. Since that time, 2016, we've had one use, that is the Wooden Hill Brewery that's located in the middle of the industrial park. Some of the concerns that were brought up when we were amending that or creating that ordinance were in regard to noise, odor, police calls. We really haven't had any issues with the Wooden Hill. We believe that the ordinance that's in place is working pretty well for us. So the ordinance before you would expand those uses, essentially the existing zoning ordinance, to the POD 2 district. There are 4 general areas where the POD 2 district is located. There's the Edina Health Building down on 494. There's the office and light industrial uses just west of Highway 100, adjacent to the industrial park. And there's also an office site that's adjacent to Pentagon Park. So it would expand to those 4 areas. So the existing ordinance defines breweries, brew pubs, cocktail rooms, distilleries. So those are all in place. We do have regulations in regards to parking for these uses, a tap room or a cocktail room. The cocktail room would be basically where in a distillery the product would be served. We require 1 space per 40 square feet. Within the manufacturing area, it's 1 space per 1,000. We also, as part of that ordinance, we allowed food trucks to be associated with those uses as long as there's not a restaurant within 500 feet. So again, that would apply to this ordinance. There's also regulations in regard to, well, the liquor license would be required. Our standards for noise, vibration, dust, smoke, odor, glare, outside storage. Hours of operation are typically tied to the liquor license. So again, this ordinance in front of the council would just expand these uses into the POD 2 zoning district. So the Planning Commission considered this at their last meeting and did recommend approval on a 7-0 or 6-0 vote. So with that, we would recommend that you grant first reading this evening, keep the public hearing open until July 29th, and then second reading, final action. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Director Teague?
I'll go.
All right, Member Brendel.
Thank you. So, hello, Eric. Welcome. These places are very popular, and I'm excited about potentially welcoming more brew pub, distillery types of businesses in our city. We really haven't had any complaints with Wooden Hill Brewing. It's quite the opposite. If there is a concern, it is that the parking spills out into the broader industrial area where they are. So that would be, if I have a concern about this, that would be my question. And there's limited parking in the area where Wooden Hill is. And the areas that have been identified as POD2s where these businesses could go, as I recall, they generally have large parking lots. And so that really is the only issue that I could think of, is just the amount of parking, because these POD2s are in busier areas than the industrial area that Wooden Hill is. So that'd be my only question is there adequate parking for this business, which will generate a lot of parking need because it's going to be very popular.
So I could take that one just in general terms. The planned office district, it's mostly office uses, and an office use requires more parking stalls than your typical industrial district, where a lot of that space is office warehouse, where they're parking one stall per 1,000 square feet, where in the office district, when those were developed, it's generally one stall per 200 square feet. But I think you're right. There's going to be more opportunity for parking spaces in a POD2 district.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
All right. And remember, Mr. Anderson may wish to address that as well when he speaks. Other questions for Director Teague at this point in time? Otherwise, we have Eric Anderson with us, who wishes to speak on behalf of the proposed change. And Mr. Anderson, welcome. Nice to have
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And good evening, Mayor Hovland and City Council members. My name is Eric Anderson, and I'm a partner with City Center Realty Partners and 20-year resident of Edina. We acquired the former Regis buildings in December of 2019. Regis unfortunately made the decision to relocate out of Edina to Minneapolis. Regis leased back most of the project through May of 2020. They have now vacated the project, and most of the building is vacant at this point. We have commenced renovations to try to attract tenants back to the building, and we think that the distillery would provide us an opportunity to provide a unique amenity to both our tenants and to the community. And to more directly answer Councilmember Brindle's question regarding parking, we are negotiating with an existing distillery. The lease has not been executed yet, but we feel very confident that we're going to get there. It's a distillery that has a very good product, has great service. I'm really excited about it. Their hours, they generally open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And our office tenants are generally walking out the door by 5 in the afternoon. At this project, we've got parking at better than 4.5 per 1,000. So we have ample parking to satisfy the requirements. And with that, I'd be open to answering any other questions that you have. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you.
Thank you. It's good to see you. And do any council members have questions for Mr. Eric Anderson? All right, stand by, Mr. Anderson. There may be some that come on as a result of opening the public hearing, which I will do now. I'm going to open this matter up for public testimony. And is there anyone in the queue, Director Benarott?
No, Mayor Hovland, we still have 2 people on the call, but neither of them are indicating a desire to speak. Callers, I would remind you, if you would like to provide testimony in this matter, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Otherwise, council, I would recommend that we wait just a minute or so in case there are additional callers trying to get in.
All right, thank you, Director Brenner. We'll wait for your further guidance.
I think it's safe for you to move on with your meeting.
All right, thank you. Council members, does anyone have a question for Member Anderson that you've thought of in the period we've been waiting for public testimony?
No, not tonight.
Not.
Nope.
All right, if not, I will entertain a motion from council members for a granting of first reading of ordinance 2020-09, close the public hearing on noon, July 29th, and continue the action on this item to the August 5th City Council meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved.
We got a motion by Member Anderson, second by Member Fisher. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle.
You're on mute, Member Brindle. Say it again, please.
Aye.
Thank you.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motion passes as stated. And Mr. Anderson, EJ Anderson, would you tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing over in the building? And what kind of you're looking for?
Yeah, so we actually had a great tour today with a tenant that would be relocating out of Bloomington into about 12,000 square feet. But it will be a mixed use building. I think, if I have to guess, I would guess we'd probably end up with in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 tenants in the building, depending on the size that they would that they would bring. But this particular company happens to be a food service delivery company. And of course, we have the distillery that we're talking to, and we're renovating the entire first floor that will have an outdoor patio. It's something that we're really excited about. It's good to see, the building really hadn't been touched since 1985. So a lot of old things in the building, and we've gone in and completely renovated or demoed all of the first floor, and it's got wonderful ceiling heights and great window lines, and it really is starting to take shape.
Well, make sure that you invite us over when you have a ribbon cutting. We'll be glad to help you out, and I would love to see what you've done over there. So
thank you. We'll certainly do that, and I appreciate the time tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, the next matter we have is also handled by our Community Development Director, Carrie Teague, and that is the potential issuance of a conditional use permit with variances at 4425 Valley View Road. That matter is embodied in Resolution 2020-74. Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a site that you're familiar with as they've been through the sketch plan review. So it's located just south of Valley View Road, east of Wooddale. This is the former New Horizon daycare. It's now vacant as they've moved across the street. Note that there's a city-owned property to the south that separates this site from the single-family residential area to the south. As I mentioned, they did go through sketch plan. The proposal here is for a 21-unit apartment building with underground parking. Generally, the sketch plan was pretty well received. They have made a few adjustments to the plan based on some of that feedback. You recall they, I guess this graphic shows that they were going to have a shared driveway off of Valley View Road. The proposal now is for them to have their own driveway. They're not giving up on the idea of a shared driveway. They would have to work with that adjacent property owner. There is a new owner potentially of the lot to the south. That current driveway encroaches onto the property that we're talking about this evening, and they've indicated they would like to, or they would be taking that portion of the encroachment onto their own site. So with that, the applicant would construct a new driveway for the proposal before you this evening. Again, there is a potential that they could share if that's worked out. At sketch plan, there was a sidewalk proposed right along the street. They have revised that for the boulevard style sidewalk that we had discussed at sketch plan. There's another look at the building. Here's a look from the rear. Access to the garage is off of the back, off of that driveway that I mentioned. Building would be constructed of masonry and stone with lap siding. The applicant will go through this in a little more detail as part of their presentation. So this request requires a conditional use permit to allow the residential uses within a commercial zoning district. There's a building height variance from 2 stories to 3 stories. The small area plan for Valley View and Wooddale suggests 4 stories for this site. And they are requesting a number of variances, the front yard setback, side and rear setbacks, as well as a floor area ratio and drive aisle setbacks. As I mentioned, this is a picture from the small area plan. This is the site right here. Note that it is guided for a 4-story development, and this building would be 3 stories and 36 feet tall. And here's that new driveway that would access the site. In order to provide some separation, assuming there's no shared driveway here, the applicant has indicated that they would shift the driveway over 2 or 3 feet just to provide some separation, potentially some green space in between the 2 driveways. The grading and drainage, the drainage plan, drainage would be directed to the back. There's going to be an underground system located right here that would filter out sediment before it travels to that pond to the south. So potentially we could have, cleaner water going into that wetland. As I mentioned, they are requesting some setback variances. In terms of the density in the comprehensive plan, it is consistent here. The plan suggests 30 units an acre, and that is what's proposed, and they would be adequately parked. So primary issues are the variances and conditional use permit justified here, and staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval. We believe the practical difficulty here is the small lot size, kind of an odd-shaped lot. It'd be difficult to fit a 3-story building. The height of the building establishes the required setbacks. So, and it is 1 story shorter than the small area plan suggests. And again, the site does appear larger due to that wetland to the south. That limited building pad also compromises the area that's available for drive aisle setbacks. And the zoning ordinance does encourage buildings to be pulled up to the street as long as there's that pedestrian active streetscape. Again, you can see that separation to the single family homes to the south. We believe that the heights are reasonable, again, 1 story less than the small area plan. And the proposal does meet the conditional use permit criteria. We did have a traffic study done that was done by Wenck Associates. Ed Terhar is with us this evening to answer any questions that may come up. But the use here that's proposed would generate less traffic than the previous daycare on the site. At the Planning Commission meeting, the vote was 4-2. The 2 that voted against it were due to a condition that one of the commissioners put on the project, and that was that the applicant provide a physical barrier between traffic and the bike lane that's located within Valley View Road. So the 2 commissioners that voted against it didn't agree with that condition. They liked the project. So staff has some concerns too about that condition. There's really the bike lane that's in front of this development. It's within the roadway. It's designed as a shared bike lane with traffic. So to establish a physical barrier where there's no interference between cars and bikes is really, it's not possible here. So we did have engineering staff has revised their memos to address the issue, as well as Ed Tierhar. And we're suggesting, and engineering did take this to the Transportation Commission, and what we're suggesting here is that the applicant provide some signage that would direct deliveries to the back of the building. So one of the concerns was to have deliveries parking to block the bicycle lane. So if we could direct that to the back, that could help. And also that staff and the Transportation Commission will review impacts of an off-street versus on-street bike lane for that whole stretch to try to really address a safety of that bike lane. And to put that on the developer would be difficult in this situation. So with that, again, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in the resolution before you. But again, we would recommend that you hold the keep the public hearing open again to July 29th and then take action at your next meeting. So with that, I will stop there and answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Teague. That was a good presentation. Do any council members have questions for Director Teague at this point in time?
So, Carrie, you talked about the stormwater storage and the idea that it'd actually be an improvement for the wetland right behind it compared to what's there today. Is there any concern about, and I actually started paying attention to the wetland for the first time based on an issue that came up in our consent agenda with Lake Otto and Lake Nancy and those water bodies over there. This wetland is not draining anywhere. It's a captured wetland. I mean, it's and when I talked to Mr. Milner earlier, he said if it were to fill up, it exits onto Wooddale and then down over the street basically to Lake Nancy. Is there any concern from engineering or planning or anything that about the wetland? Everything feels good with this development and its proximity and what they're proposing?
Yeah, I can chime in on that one, Gary, if you'd like. Sure. Actually, the water quality is going to be better after the project with that stormwater treatment system. And we're not concerned with this filling up because there is that emergency overflow at just overland based on the contours over Wooddale Avenue. So the water would go over that street into the storm system and then head west before it starts to impact structures. You'd still have backyard issues as that pond goes up and down like it does today.
Right.
Engineering's reviewed it and we're comfortable with the plans for stormwater that they put forward.
So we know that the water quality will be better going in. Does the holding tank also slow it down a bit? So it's actually going in slower than the site would be today?
Yeah, we look at the existing conditions compared to the proposed conditions and then look at those numbers to see the difference there, and they need to address the difference.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question related to stormwater.
All right, Member Brindle, then Member Anderson.
Oh, thank you. So is any of the stormwater being used for irrigation on this site? And if not, why?
It'd probably be a question for the applicant. Maybe they can address that when they do their presentation.
Okay.
All right, Member Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. Carrie, I was just, I was interested in your comments about the bike lane through there and the potential expansion of it or extension of it. I wonder if you could expand on that just a little bit. It is skinny in there. When I go through there, it's tight.
Yeah, I think and Director Milner can chime in as well. I think the way it was explained to me is there are different options. Potentially, it could be a striped lane where it's just designated for the bikes rather than a shared lane. It could be shifting bike lane to the sidewalk or some combination of a shared lane. I think the Transportation Commission wanted to take a look at all of their options there for the.
Okay, so that's going to be a kind of an ongoing conversation, is what I'm getting.
Yes, Councilmember Anderson, the difficulty is having one project or one property make changes to the street. We need everybody along the corridor to make some real changes.
Yeah.
We're tight on space. We just put that traffic signal in, so it made some real improvements. We remove the center turn lane. I think the improvements we got with the traffic signal now go away. And that's what we need for space for bikes and peds. So we look for those opportunities with reconstruction, and we realign some of the space, maybe ask for some shared space where the sidewalks are now in the future. But you just have to look at it from a whole corridor from Wooddale all the way down to 62 and see what kind of space we have when we come back for reconstruction.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more.
Yes, Member Fisher.
Carrie, if I'm understanding right, this project meets almost every goal of the small area plan, and in fact, doesn't even achieve the height that's anticipated in the small area plan, and yet it needs a whole slew of variances. Why is that? What do we just not update our zoning to match our small area plan? I mean, what puts us in this situation where we need the variances?
Yeah, it's mainly due to our requirement for any setback, you need to be set back as tall as the building is. So that really creates the biggest problem. So they need a 36-foot setback on all sides of the property. And you really can't fit much of anything within that building envelope.
Okay, so the small area plan was kind of dealing in 1,000-foot level, and they just didn't, it wasn't about could it work on that site. It's just saying you could have that height. And so
Right.
regardless, we're going to end up having to have variances if we want anything of substance there.
Correct, yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Member Fisher. Any other questions for Director Teague?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just chime in on that point and say maybe that's a zoning change we need to be making to bring our zoning code in conformance with the new comp plan.
Yeah.
Not with respect to this application, but going forward.
Maybe we can add that to the Planning Commission's work plan. Take a look at that, or amend their work plan. All right, I noticed that we have Dean DeVolis with us and Michael Margulies representing the applicant, and I think Director Teague, you've indicated they'd have about 10 minutes for making a presentation.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. And so, Mr. DeVolis and Mr. Margulies, welcome.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to your comments. Good to see both of you looking healthy.
Well, I appreciate it. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before Dean takes over, I'd just like to, first of all, thank staff for helping us work through the remaining issues. The project that you're seeing in front of you is virtually what you saw at sketch plan, with all of the additional comments that were presented and mentioned at sketch plan and incorporated. This is a plan that, as Councilmember Fisher has said, meets both the goals and the aspirations and the specifics of the small area plan. We're pretty pleased that we were able to do that. And that the neighbors seem to appreciate that. In fact, most of the comments we got all were favorable, and a number mentioned the fact that we're adhering to the small area plan. The issue that was raised at the Planning Commission, we think, has been properly addressed by Mr. Teague and the traffic report and Mr. Milner's report, and so we're happy with that condition and can make sure that we can comply with that. Dean, do you want to walk through the remaining architectural issues and then talk about Councilmember Brindle's question regarding drainage?
Yes.
Regarding Mr. Margulies. All right. Thank you, Mr. Margulies. And Mr. DeVolis, go ahead.
Good evening. So briefly, this building was really guided by the neighborhood plan, and that's really what we use as our guidepost to put this together. Part of the features in working with a small area plan is that we made all the lower level units have direct access to the street and designed the building so it actually looks like a series of townhouses. So the thought is, even though it's a 21 unit apartment, it really has a connection to the street and individual entries that really address Wooddale and try to enhance that pedestrian feeling, much like the condominiums started across the street with their townhouses that occurred as part of it. Architecturally, went with the masonry base, went with the wood on the upper two floors, added a lighter look to it. We articulated the front so that the balconies were inset as opposed to hung off the building. So again, it had a better feel within the site, and we enclosed 100% of our parking. We're well over parked. I mean, by code, we're the code, but we use tandem spaces so that the residents would have sufficient parking, 60 spaces within the building, no surface parking law, and then an entirely landscape around the building so the building bleeds into the natural setting. Our service area is in back, as mentioned on that, but as the planning commission kept worrying about people or delivery people doing shortcuts and pulling the front, so obviously we'll make sure we manage that situation and control the process. We will look at the idea of the idea of recirculating stormwater, because we have a filtration system which allows us to settle. We can use the upper layer to pull back for irrigation. While it won't be 100% consistent, because obviously the water drops down, we will utilize that methodology of putting our stormwater to work to keep the heavily landscaped sites improved on that basis. So that is a consideration we're looking at. The building is larger units. It's just 21 units. It has all the full amenities of a party room, exercise area, business center, and so forth, and a rooftop deck that was pushed to the front of the building as to not affect any of the residents. So that won't be visible from any of the residents to the south side of the site. And obviously that whole collar of trees we're going to maintain and keep, so the building stays very well screened in that aspect.
Excuse me, Dean.
So, yes.
Do you think you're showing us pictures right now?
No, I'm just giving you a verbal description, because you've seen the pictures, and just so I can because I could drag you through the pictures, but it's in your packets. I thought, I walk you through the pictures. I said, no, I'll just give you a description, because you're well, and that way I'll keep within the 10 minutes. Otherwise, me being the architect will take you through gory details you don't need to know on that. So that's essentially the project. They're meant to be legacy units, long-term rentals, meaning 3 to 5 years. It's really addressed for people that want to move their houses and locate an apartment building and have that kind of ability, but also behave quasi like a condominium, which you can have a longer lease than normal. And hopefully we have long-term Edina residents that wish to stay in Edina. This provides a nice alternative when their single-family house becomes too great a burn, they just want to change their lifestyle. So I'll conclude there and leave it open to questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeVolis. Are there questions for either Mr. DeVolis or Mr. Margulies?
I do have one.
Yes, Member Fisher.
So we can try and do this without pictures, but now I'm not one to question design, and I think the design is actually terrific. But there's a resident who has really been paying attention, and this person really loves the project as well, but she's focusing on this whole issue of delivery drop-off, and there's this feeling that they're going to do what's easiest, which is just pull up in front of the front door and run stuff in. And her question was, is it feasible, wouldn't it work to actually flip your public lobby entrance over to the driveway side of the building? So it's not necessarily mirroring the building, but it's moving that element. And honestly, as I was talking to her, I'm like, gosh, it's not the worst question in the world. I'm going to ask, the architect and see what he thinks about that.
It's a fair question, but I'll tell you what I decided in the end. She's right if it was more in that corner, but the reason we put the entrance to the other corner is that we wanted it, that major pedestrian entry closer to the center of the activity of the intersection, because you have across the street the grill, the bar, Snuffy's, all those residents in that corner. So the idea is we wanted to have the primary corner, the primary access to really relate to where the residents want to go to the neighborhood. So it's basically we opted pedestrian convenience over delivery convenience to really emphasize that portion. So that's why the entry went there and why we want to prefer it at that corner of the building, because it really helps address the center of the neighborhood. And so that was the basis of why it's set up the way it did.
So when the delivery does come down behind, they just have access through the back of the building? Is that what happens? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for either Mr. Margulies or Mr. DeVolis? All right. This is a public hearing matter. I'm going to open this up for public testimony. Director Benarad, is there anyone in the queue that wishes to testify regarding this matter?
No, sir, we do not yet have anyone in the queue. We do have 2 people on the call. If either of you would like to provide testimony in this matter, please press *1 on your telephone keypad now. Otherwise, I would recommend that we wait just a moment before moving on, as we might have people trying to connect now.
All right, we'll wait for further guidance from you, Director Benarad.
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting, can I ask one more quick question?
Yes, certainly, Member Fisher.
Guest parking, can you describe how that works?
So that's the pull-off space. So there's 2 areas of guest parking. Within the garage, we'll designate a few for overflow guests, and then we have guest parking in the rear driveway on the east side of the building. 3 spaces, if I remember right.
2 spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 spaces.
All right. Thank you.
So back to my question. I actually got a text from a resident while you were speaking, so I apologize. So is any of the stormwater that's captured used for irrigation?
Yes, yes. That's a consideration of the system, correct.
How is it used? What is it used for?
Well, it strictly could only be used for landscape because it's non-potable water. So it cannot be used for drinking water.
Right.
So it's strictly to irrigate the landscaping you see around the building. And that'll be the basis. And because we have a filtration system, we can pull off the top of it, not the bottom, because that's where the soot and gravel pull out. But off the upper layer, that will be essentially groundwater. And we will use the roof water, those areas, because we have to be a little careful with parking lots in that area because of salt. So that's the one consideration. We'll have to work through that basis on that. So we'll probably segregate roof water as reusable irrigation water, but not driveway or street, because salt kills plants. And unfortunately, that's still the only way you can really melt ice effectively in Minnesota.
All right. So when Director Teague was showing the PowerPoint earlier, I think it was slide 8 or 9 that showed the back of the building. And I'm trying to get an idea of what we were looking at there. So I wonder if we could look at that again, Carrie. That right there. So what is that brick structure at the back of the building?
All right. That is the garage. And we did not put windows in it because we don't want any of the headlights and the lighting, because lighting has to be on 24 hours to stick out. We plan to berm up against it as much as feasibly possible and add vines and other elements. And that landscape, unfortunately, did not get into that rendering. So the idea is we plan to basically berm and green out that wall. But we do not plan to put any windows, so we control any light, because those lights do not go off in the garage as part of it. So that's what you're looking at is the exposed portion of the parking garage.
Okay, so how is that garage ventilated?
There may be some vents that'll be on the sides. There'll be an intake vent and an entry vent, which will be on the upper side, and then a vent that'll blow out on the other side. It'll be around the side, basically facing west. Because you want to pull air in from the east side, and we're going to exhaust air out on the west side.
All right, and some of these ventilation systems have generated noise complaints. So what is the noise that is anticipated from this ventilation system?
That is why there's no vents facing towards the south. That we're taking it, facing it towards the east, which actually goes against the other commercial building on that idea. So that way our noise is directed away from any residences and towards the commercial building that's there.
All right. And what's on the top of the building? I mean, there's that one part that's built up in 3 layers. Talk to me about.
So that in the distance, that's a rooftop deck. So towards the front of the building. Now, actually, that's been pushed to the front of the building. So that's our elevator coming through. And we have a roof deck. But when you have a roof deck, you're required to have 2 means of egress. So both stair towers extend to the roof. And that roof deck occurs on the north side of the building at the front, not the back. When you draw an elevation like this, you tend to pick up on those pieces. So from below grade, from the level of the houses to the south, none of that will be visible except the one stair tower you see on your right.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Brindle. Director Benarott, anyone prepared to testify?
We have no one in the queue to testify.
All right. Any other questions from council members? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at noon on July 29th and continue the action on the item to the August 5th City Council meeting. This is with regard to Resolution 2020-74, which seeks approval of the council on a conditional use permit with variances to build a 21-unit apartment building at 4425 Valley View Road. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
We're closing the public hearing, right?
We're closing the public hearing on noon, July 29th, and
Great.
continuing the action on the item to the August 5th City Council meeting.
Yep.
And
All right.
Member Fisher moved? Or Member?
Yes. Fisher.
And then second?
Second.
Member Brindle? Any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to the motion as stated. Clerk Ellison?
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The motion as stated is approved. And the public hearing will stay open until July 29th, and we will take up action on this item on the August 5th City Council agenda. Thank you,
Mayor.
Wallace. Thank you, Member Mr. Margulies. Mr.
Mayor.
Wallace, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to say, Mayor and Council, thank you very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
your guys' help on this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this evening. All right, that concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. We're going to move on now to reports and recommendations. And the first matter there is item 9A, and that is a proposed resolution 2020-60, which deals with a variance appeal at 4248 Alden Drive. And Ms. Ocker, our Assistant Planning Director, has this matter. Ms. Ocker?
Chris, I don't think your microphone has been unmuted.
Sorry about that. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this agenda item is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a south setback variance for a corner lot along Morningside Road and Alden Drive. As I had indicated, it's for an 11.2-foot setback variance for a corner lot. This would facilitate a tear-down rebuild of a new home. The request was heard and approved by the Planning Commission at their April 15th meeting. The Planning Commission's decision was appealed to the City Council with the public hearing conducted on June 16th. The City Council meeting with the opportunity to comment through the City Better Together website or email up until noon on July 15th. The public hearing is now closed. Resolutions for both approving and denying the request, Resolution 2020-60, was within the packet. With that, I will stand for questions or hand the matter over to the City Council for their decision. The applicants, Ellie Jelsing and Shane Jensen, and the appellant, Andy Warner, were invited to the WebEx meeting. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
All right, for folks that have been invited to the WebEx meeting that are interested in this, either from a proponent or opponent standpoint, just a reminder that this is not a public hearing unless a question comes to you from a council member or through staff. You will not be participating in this matter. Any questions for Ms. Ocker with respect to this variance appeal? All right, so we've got two courses of action here. We've got a resolution 2020-60 that grants an 18.6-foot front yard setback variance to the required setback along Morningside Road at 4248 Alden Drive, or we have a resolution 2020-60 that denies an 18.6-foot front yard setback variance to the required front yard setback along Morningside Road at 4248 Alden Drive. Thoughts from council members on having listened to all the testimony regarding this matter? And now it's decision-making time. Anyone care to lead off?
I guess I could.
All right, Member Fisher.
We've gotten a lot of information from both perspectives here, and while it's always hard when you're talking about these things when there's a family involved that's talking about moving into a property, but that's not something that can impact our decision actually. And so the primary things that I looked at, and the reason that I will not support the variance that's been granted by the Planning Commission, is that for me, the number one point is the garage facing Alden Drive is a huge character change for the neighborhood, for that street. I spent a lot of time walking and driving back and forth, and it drastically changes the character of Alden. And it's one thing if it's a garage facing Alden, because there are some small garages facing Alden, but they're tied in with the architecture of the house, or they're pushed back, or their scale and character. This is what I would, and folks have talked about this, that this is a kind of the big suburban garage becoming the main feature of that entire elevation, and that just doesn't work. So that's one thing. I think the whole idea of, clearly there's going to be a setback variance on this piece of property. I don't know how you wouldn't be able to do that, given if you're using the property immediately next to it as your basis for where the setback should be. I question that because it's a different type of property. It's a deep property, so they set the house back, which then supposedly defines where this house is supposed to be, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe that's just the way our rules are, but we do have to address that. So then the question is, what's the appropriate variance? And for that, I look at the other similar lots. And if you look at the lot on this block, that would be a 16.1 foot setback. If you looked at, I tried all kinds of variations, and in every math exercise I did, whether you include the house across the street, the house is just on this block, it's all right around a 16 to 17 foot setback, which made me really go and look at the one on Crocker, which was granted a variance, I think, a year ago or so, and it's a fresh new house. And it's a house that was designed and built with a rather a narrower footprint, but it works. And I'm sure everyone can weigh in whether or not that's an attractive house, not an attractive house, whatever. But we know it can physically work. And so, it feels like the actual setback that's going to be required is probably different than what was requested here. And then the third thing I would say is that design matters. And I think design is going to be critical when you have a challenging site. And there's nobody that can say this is not a challenging site. It's challenging in so many ways. But the thing is, it's what type of design. And there's what I would call builder design, and I'm not meaning to offend anyone, but that means you have some favored floor plans, and then you just kind of mix and match and find the one that you like the most. I'm talking design. I'm talking about when an architect looks at us, they meet with a client and understand what that family needs, and they look at the context, and they look at the site, and they design something that meets all of those needs. And that's what I don't necessarily see here. And I think it's going to be critical for a site like this to really dig in and design something that meets all of those needs. And this one just doesn't. And so I will not be in favor of granting the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Member Anderson?
Yeah,
thank you for raising your hand.
It can be seen. The Member Fisher, I think, was quite eloquent in his remarks, and mine run corollary to his, as a matter of fact. Although I tend to look at it more from the dominance of the house on the block. How does it fit into the neighborhood? How does it fit into Morningside as much as anything else? So I weigh that out and say, to me, the requested variance is it's just not within keeping of the neighborhood. I think ultimately there could be a very nice home built on that site, and I think that the design approach will determine how that fits in, and it may ultimately, as Member Fisher states, it may ultimately require variance. But I think that this design is really not appropriate for the site. I put it into the category of 10 pounds potatoes in a 5-pound sack. I just think it's just too much there. On a larger site in Indian Hills, someplace else, you might be able to build that house and have it snuggle right in. I don't think it's the right one for that. The immediate neighborhood certainly reflects that as well. It's their sentiments. So, like Member Fisher, I wouldn't be able to support that variance request.
Thank you. Member Brindle?
Yep, I'll go. So I am in the same camp for many of the same reasons. So when I look at an architectural home, it really needs to fit the lot. The lot can't fit the home, and this lot doesn't fit this home, and vice versa. This home doesn't fit the lot. So style notwithstanding, looking at 50 by 200 and how this building fits on that lot it doesn't fit, and it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. There are other examples of larger homes that have been built since the smaller homes that were originally built on these properties in Morningside. And there are many of them that snuggle right in, and this one does not. And for that reason, I don't think it fits the neighborhood. I don't think it fits the lot. And so I will vote to deny.
Thank you, Member Brindle. Member Staunton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the comments that I have heard before me, and I won't repeat them. I think they all make a lot of sense. I would note that 4249 Crocker house, if you walk over there and see it, it's a big house. That's a lot of space, and so it is possible to put it, and it's on a lot that is actually smaller than this lot. It's 50 by 190 or so, or 185, as opposed to 50 by 200. And that house is 26 feet 9 inches, or 26.9. It's less than 27 feet wide at its widest point. And the applicant has a house that's 32 feet wide at its widest point. So, and the one on Crocker, if I'm reading it right, has a 7-foot setback from the house to the north. So I agree that a variance of some type will be needed, but when you start to look at these, you see, it's set back 16 feet from the front lot line. I think there is a way to design this house so that it's not as severe. They have to deal with the topography. I agree about the garage. If you look up and down Morningside, all the garages come out on Morningside. They don't come out on the side streets. And so I just think that they have not really done what they can do to try to fit this lot into the site, or fit this structure into the site. So I'll be opposing it.
Yeah, thank you, Member Staunton. I join my colleagues in opposing the matter, and would vote to deny the 18.6-foot front yard setback variance. This lot, elevated from the street, it's interesting now in the way it's been landscaped, so that you can hardly detect the house up there, much less the garage. That's a separate garage, but you don't need to go any further than down to the corner of Morningside Road and Grimes to see a house that's on a similar sized lot that has the garage facing Morningside Road to see that things are possible. There's also a house over on 54th and Halifax that was built on a very narrow, long lot. It was a beautiful piece of architectural design. So it can be done. With the subject property being 50 by 200, a lot of really interesting things are possible, especially with that lot elevation. And so I join my colleagues in determining that there's nothing unique about this property, in the sense that they can't put something on the lot that will work well and work for a family as well on a 50 by 200 foot lot. So I'm in favor of also denying the 18.6-foot front yard setback variance request. It sounds like we're in unanimity here, so we could adopt that resolution 2020-60, which denies the 18.6-foot front yard setback variance request to the required front yard setback along Morningside Road at 4248 Alden Drive. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Member Brindle moves.
Second.
Member Staunton seconds. Any discussion with regard to the proposed resolution denying the variance request? All right, roll call, please, Ms. Ellison.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The motion is adopted. Variance request embodied in resolution 2020-60 is denied. All right, thank you. And now on to item 9B, and I think Member Anderson needs to recuse himself here.
I do.
And
walk out.
All right, we will we'll figure out a way to get a hold of you. This matter, Director Teague has, and it requires a certain number of actions on our part, establishing a PUD zoning district, comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning. And Director Teague, you want to lead us through the matter again?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just to refresh your memories, it has been a while. So the request before you is a comprehensive plan amendment from the current designation of low density attached residential to medium density residential, which allows up to 12 units an acre. The rezoning is to PUD, planned unit development. The applicant has been through several iterations of the plan. I believe they came through with a sketch plan at 12 units. They made a formal application at 10 units. And now the second application where they've, based on some of the direction from the council, they've eliminated 2 more units. So the proposal is for 8 units. They have divided them into 2 buildings to provide that green space in the middle. They've attempted to save those trees on the south side, of the lot. So staff and the Planning Commission recommendation was unanimous. So both staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning. And with that, I can turn it back over to the council for questions. The applicant is on the phone. Should there be any questions that come up from the council?
Director Teague, were there any changes made to the plan at all, or the structure between our meeting about a month ago and tonight by the applicant?
I don't believe so. They've submitted some new plans to, I believe, further clarify things.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So we have several different potential actions here. And I noticed in the guidance from our city clerk that we're talking about action by roll call vote, 4/5 majority. My understanding is that would be, is that on the comp plan amendment only?
That's correct. That's the comprehensive plan amendment.
So with Member Anderson recusing himself, do we need a 3/4 vote or a 4-0 vote on the comprehensive plan amendment?
Yeah, I believe it's a 4-0 vote.
Okay. And which of these matters would you want to take up first? Would it be the comprehensive plan amendment because the other ones require a simple majority?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. The comprehensive plan first, and if the council does not approve the comprehensive plan amendment, you wouldn't want to approve the rezoning then either. All
right. And Attorney Knudsen, would you concur with that sort of process of approach? We take a look at the comprehensive plan amendment first because that requires all of us voting in favor of it theoretically.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Then we can take up the other matters that would be a simple majority vote. So Director Teague, do you want to talk a little bit about what the comprehensive plan amendment would involve?
Yeah, in terms of the actual amendment to the plan, it would be fairly simple, just amending our land use map and changing the designation from low density attached to medium density for these 2 lots.
All right.
We would have to submit to Metropolitan Council and get their approval, so there's that process to go through following this. Also, just to let the council know in terms of timing, should you be headed in a denial type direction, you could authorize staff to prepare findings for that and do that at your next meeting. We're not up against a hard deadline this evening to make a final decision.
All right, thank you, Director Teague. All right, is there anyone who wants to lead off on this matter with respect to the comprehensive plan? And I only mentioned this first is because it's got to be unanimous, but we're really talking about the entire project and the things that have been done by the applicant on behalf of the the developers that own the property. They've been through sketch plan, as Director Teague said. They've been to us several times with different plans and lowering the number of units. And at least it was my sense last time I asked quite a few questions about front staircases, overall elevation. I was concerned that they seemed to be a bit top heavy. We didn't know about materials, but we were notified that they had something for us to look at in terms of a piece of property that would be using identical materials. And I think at least Member Brindle and I went over and looked at that single family home that was built on Saxony using the materials they would use at this particular site. I also had a conversation with the builder, and those questions that I had were answered for me. So I think Member Fisher and Member Staunton had voiced strong opinions about the appropriateness of a townhouse project at this location to satisfy a variety of community needs, and maybe one of the two of them would care to lead off and give us their current thoughts on the overall project, and then maybe that'll lead us to being able to vote on all three matters, but leading off with the comprehensive plan. Either Member Fisher or Member Staunton care to lead off?
Sure, I can start, Mr. Mayor. So for me, the big issue was the density here. As a single family attached housing, it had up to 8 units per acre for these two sites, which have been single family attached. And the 4-unit apartment building site is really over 8 units per acre now. And as the applicant has I think, effectively reminded us, it's been medium density for a long time in that area. And if we don't permit this, it's not going to turn over. And so the big stumbling block for me was really the comprehensive plan issue. I wasn't comfortable with high density, but I think in this particular location with these two sites, and if you notice, the northern boundary of the second parcel is pretty much equal with the city parcel that's across the street in Vernon. And so this does shape a kind of, and then to the south, of course, you have a multifamily. So it is an appropriate, to me, buffer and transition into the neighborhood. And I think it meets this missing middle that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and they've done it in a nice way. And I'm persuaded that they have created space where it's not going to be any taller than anything around it. It's going to have some space between it. It's going to provide some front lawns and some stoops and some garages in the back. And I think it's a great fit, and so I'll be supportive of it.
Thank you. Member Fisher?
So I talked at great length in earlier meetings about this, so I'll skip past a lot of that. And I'll just say I agree. This is that missing middle. This is a type of housing that we need in our community. It's exactly the right location for it. If you zoom up and look at an aerial photo, this is filling in the last little piece that isn't that buffer to single family neighborhoods to the west. If you forget even all the definitions of density, whether it's high, low, medium, whatever, it's just simply put, we're going from 5 units of housing on these parcels to 8. It's hardly noticeable, frankly, in the scheme of things. That is a marginal increase in density. It will continue. This street will continue after this project is built to be the lowest density street in this neighborhood. And that's including all of the single family home blocks. And there are practical reasons to have slightly higher density in this location, and that has to do with access to transit, access to the commercial across the street. It's the right place to have a little bit more density, not to mention the buffer that Councilmember Staunton talked about. And the only other thing I'm going to do, and just because I feel like I have to keep repeating this at every meeting when we have the chance, is that's to connect the dots. The other reason it makes sense to increase density when we can responsibly do it is it's the cost of infrastructure in our city. Every street reconstruction project we have, it's not a coincidence that the higher or the lower the density of the properties on the street, the more stressed out people are about our street reconstruction, because the fewer units, the higher cost per unit to repair their infrastructure. In this case, we've had neighbors from 3 blocks away saying they're supporting their neighbors on Hankerson to have lower density. And I'm not sure they totally have understood that that lower density on Hankerson means people 3 blocks away are going to pay more for their streets. Because when we do street reconstruction, we're going to come in and do probably the whole neighborhood. And everyone's going to share the cost divided by the number of units. So in a way, it's not fair for Hankerson to have such low density. It's costing other people on other streets more money for their infrastructure. And that may seem like sort of a side note, but I want us to keep thinking about that, because there is a relationship between density and the price we all pay for the cost of the infrastructure that we all need in our city. So I will definitely support this. And by the way, the end result, this developer has worked really hard to answer so many questions and so many challenges. And is it perfect? Probably not, but it's pretty darn good. And I think it'll be a really good project here. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Member Brindle, would it help you if I went next, or would you want to go next?
Oh, I can go. I've got my notes here.
Okay.
So one of my challenges with this project is that I've struggled to get an idea of the human element as it relates to what's it going to feel like to stand in front of this building, to the side of this building. Convince someone this is a good looking building when it's never going to look like it does on paper. Because on paper, I don't know how that person interacts with that building as it relates to standing next.
Feeds here. Everybody else is disappearing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, Member Allison, yeah, we've got a lot of things going on here all of a sudden at 9:30 at night.
It wasn't just your house, Sharon.
Sharon, we were able to hear that.
Oh, I am so sorry. I'm
about
connected now. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, but there's more going on than just at your house.
Is Mike on?
Is Scott Denfeld, can you tell what's going on?
Mike's on now. Okay.
The only person that was visible to me that whole time was Roger Knudsen. It's good that Roger didn't leave.
Scott, can you tell what's happening?
Lost Scott. That's a bad sign.
Yeah. And Jennifer?
Well, maybe we lost HQ.
That's a first.
Yeah, we did lose contact with you there a little bit. Sorry about that. We got kicked off.
Is Scott? I see Scott's off mute. Denfeld, do we have any update?
I'll reach out to them right now.
Rosland, this is Scott Denfeld. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Scott.
So I think what happened was we lost the main lost connection, but it looks like it's back up. So I think you should be able to continue. I set up a different network connection, so we should be good to go.
All right.
Okay.
The screen looks more condensed now for some reason on mine. Well,
That's because you're in the middle.
there. No, I had I guess all of a sudden the note-taking section popped up. So.
Oh, I see.
All right. So, Member Brindle, you were talking about, I think a little bit about height, and then you were going to go on to your next thought.
Just getting comfortable with scale. That's been difficult for me. And from the perspective of residents, I've worked really hard to listen to residents and find some middle ground and to see how this project could reach some middle ground. And to that degree, I really have to thank Scott Benke for all the listening. I can't imagine how much hard work this is when he's getting direction on this project and other projects, and then he's getting requests from us to consider other design elements and styles to make the project feel, I guess, softer, if you will. We are a demanding council. While you could have built what you showed us in the very beginning, I don't feel that design really respected the neighborhood. So the elements, the roof over the front door, the different materials that create that allow this to have a more creative look that might reflect what would be built in a single family home, so that it doesn't look quite so commercial as a multifamily. So so I appreciate that I think, been able, through some tweaks, been able to find some middle ground. And finally, this is a big project for this neighborhood, and it's also brought out feelings and fears on the part of the residents in this neighborhood. And if this is approved, I think that Donna Homes is really going to have to put their best foot forward and be respectful, be kind, be welcoming to the neighbors who really have poured out their fears. And for some of them, their worst fears may be realized tonight, if they really, truly are concerned about this being approved. So I would encourage Donna to be respectful, and it's of utmost importance that residents who live near this project feel safe, feel respected, feel honored, and that Donna feels like a neighbor in the neighborhood and treats neighbors neighborly during this process. So I have been kind of on all sides of this, and as is kind of my way of dealing with a project like this, just wanting to make sure that we do give the neighborhood the project that we hope will fit, and we hope ultimately will be something that adds to the neighborhood. as it goes to density, this neighborhood is no stranger to density. When you lift up on Google Earth, this neighborhood is really surrounded by density. It's just that there's such tree cover that the neighborhood and the streets really just serve the neighborhood. They're insulated from the high density that really surrounds the neighborhood. So we're not introducing density that isn't already there. And so that for that, there's some relief for me. I do agree that as you go down Hankerson, I think it's likely that there will be some other development happening, and it could be low density to medium density over and above single family. So with that, I will say that after doing some thinking and some really trying to understand what the human scale is of this, I will vote in favor of it. I will vote in favor of the comprehensive plan amendment and of the project.
Thank you, Member Brindle. I thought Member Staunton made a great point when he said it's been medium density for years. And maybe that was Member Fisher, but one of the two, medium density for years. With the apartment building there that really looks like it was snatched off the beaches of Florida somewhere and plunked in the neighborhood behind Wells Fargo. For me, one of the things that was, we saw as a constant sort of concern from the neighborhood was that they were concerned that this was going to involve some sort of opening onto Vernon Avenue from the side street. And I think we had as many concerns expressed about that as anything, but no one on the council ever expressed any interest in creating connectivity to Vernon. The builder never expressed that interest. The developers, the owners of the building never expressed that interest. So that, I think one of those big worries of the neighborhood was, I don't know how it surfaced and got so much momentum, but it's something that they should not worry about, because I don't think anybody favors that as a downstream sort of result of this particular project. The height, Member Brindle mentioned, I was concerned about that too. You remember a month ago, I thought it seemed top heavy, but there's been some work done. The staircase work's been done. I like the materials I saw in the house on Saxony. I went down to 49th where they've got a twin home, a beautiful twin home, and looked at the roof line down there. And Member Brindle, this may help you, and you may have been driven by there, but just as a reminder, the roof line here will actually be, I think, a couple feet lower than the house over on 49th Street. So that helped settle me down too on the height issue. And then I like the fact that there's that grade change from the north to the south. And in fact, with the single family home that'll be, that this will be next to after they remove that existing single family home, there's that grade change right there that helps settle the whole complex down too. So I got comfortable on the height issue. I got comfortable on the design issue. I think that kind of farmhouse style that it's become, if you will, in design is far superior to what's there now. The materials I thought looked first rate. And I got comfortable with the idea that they do a really good job. And there would be a lot of people who would be very happy about living there in close proximity to everything that that neighborhood has to offer commercially. At what now seems to be a pretty good price point. Still seems high to me, but it's a good price point. So I'm in favor of it too. I would be in favor of all three legal actions that we need to take. And it sounds like we might as well start with, well, maybe we could just, Attorney Knudsen, how do you want to do this now that you see that you have unanimity of opinion? Do we handle it all in a single motion, or do you want them done separately?
Everyone unanimously agrees to all of them, and there's no problem having a single motion.
All right. We've got ordinance 2020-04. We better do this differently because that's a first reading issue. Well, I guess we could do it this way. We could grant first reading of ordinance 2020-04, establishing the PUD zoning district. We could adopt resolution 2020-63 and 2020-64, approving the comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning. And if we'll do it by roll call vote, and if we have a unanimous vote, then we'll have all of them approved as stated in the motion. So, Director Teague, will that handle it?
Yes, that should cover it. Thanks.
Okay. So is there a motion to grant first reading of ordinance number 2020-04, establishing the PUD zoning district, and also including in that motion an adoption of resolution 2020-63 and 2020-64, which approve the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning?
So moved.
Second.
Member Brindle moves, Member Staunton seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson? Oh, I'm sorry. Member Fisher?
It's not letting me unmute.
We can hear you.
Oh, it's telling me I'm muted.
I know.
Says
Just say
you're muted
aye.
here too.
I'm glad I didn't swear about it then.
Member Fisher?
It's an aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. All the motions pass as stated. Next is the resolution 2020-65, which is the parking stall variance and site plan for M Health, and Director Teague has this matter as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is M Health at the Southdale Fairview Hospital. They'd like to do the 38,000 square foot addition. The goal here is to create single occupancy rooms. So there's actually no increase in the number of beds or staff that's proposed. So staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of the site plan, and it's basically a parking stall variance update to the previous variance that was granted. And I will stop there and answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Director Teague regarding the
Nope.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2020-65 approving a parking stall variance and site plan amendment at 6401 France Avenue South for M Health?
So moved.
Southdale. Yeah, thank you. Member Fisher?
Second.
Member Brindle? Got a motion and second on the resolution as stated with respect to resolution 2020-65. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Allison?
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. Motion passes. Resolution 2020-65 is adopted. Next matter is resolution number 2020-66, which is a proposed subdivision with variances at 5928 Abbott Avenue South for second story build. Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is another recommendation that was unanimous by Planning Commission, and staff is recommending approval. It's a proposal for a subdivision to basically reestablish the original plat. So taking what's now a 100-foot wide lot, turning it into two, tearing the existing home down, and building two new homes. This is the last house on this block that faces Abbott that is a 100-foot wide lot, or I should say it's the only lot. All other lots are 50 feet wide. So with that, I will stop there and answer any questions, or council can take action.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Teague with regard to proposed resolution 2020-66? Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-66, which would approve the preliminary and final plat with variances at 5928 Abbott Avenue South?
So moved.
Member Staunton moves.
Second.
Member Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Allison.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. Resolution 2020-66 is adopted. And then Director Milner has the next matter in this portion of the agenda, and that is a request for purchase 2020 pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Director Milner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Getting my PowerPoint up. Pedestrian and bicycle improvements. So there's a contract award tonight for your consideration. The reason we pulled this off the consent agenda is because of a petition, multiple petitions we've received for and against the Creek Valley Road realignment at Valley View Road and the Valley View Road sidewalk. So within this award tonight, there is 4 pieces or 4 separate project areas. The first one is the Tracy Avenue shared use path. That's on the east side of Tracy from the roundabout up to Highway 62. We have the next 2 that I'll speak to in a little bit. And then the 4th one is a crosswalk and pedestrian improvements at Gleason Avenue. So I'd say in the very least, we could award number 1 and 4. And if the council decides to make some changes to the award, we could not do 2 and 3. But we'll see where the council lands after I provide a little bit more information. So just wanted to share that we could piece this award together with multiple combinations. Well, going to the Creek Valley area, this was a graphic that we had put together to start the conversation with residents. If you recall, there was a petition submitted by residents along Creek Valley Road last fall, last August, September. We came back to council in October and got direction to move forward with this. And moving forward with this included this red line is a curb realignment or realignment of the intersection versus the yellow line is existing. So that was one piece of the petition. We've gotten lots of calls and concerns and traffic safety requests for cars coming down Creek Valley Road, dropping people off at the cul-de-sac for the new athletic fields. So this is one measure that staff felt we could signify to people coming off 62 that you're entering a neighborhood street. You need to first slow down, but the ultimate goal was to deter cars from even making that turn because there's a new sign over here that says all high school area drop-offs should be done at the high school. With the petition that we received, they also wanted to have a sidewalk installed on this side to connect to the roundabout, going up here along this corridor. So we had a petition for it last fall. There was some people that were against it last fall, but we never got a formal petition. In the council packet tonight under correspondence and petitions is a formal petition from many of the individuals on Creek Valley against both the alignment and the sidewalk. So our notes misrepresented that petition and the petitioner clarified it for me today. So they are against both of these improvements, the realignment and the sidewalk. When we looked at the people on that petition, they were also the same people that signed the petition for this work last year. So it's really a mixed bag of results. It's petitions for and against, back and forth. It feels like whoever knocks on your door, that's the petition you're signing. So we've had this formal one tonight that's on your agenda that you're going to accept and forward to Edina for consideration, but we're kind of considering it here before you even accept it. Recall those previous petitions and then just a variety of these mixed results. We've had another traffic safety request 2 weeks ago. I have a meeting on Thursday with some more residents to try to look at some stuff to do with traffic. In my opinion, I feel like it's time to try something down here related to traffic at this location. Continue to get those requests. We've presented other test options, but we can't get any support. We typically do not review the same issues unless there's been major changes on a corridor. So we wouldn't do the same intersection review of the traffic safety committee within 2 to 3 years if there wasn't major changes, but this issue just keeps coming up over and over and every year. So I would recommend we just award all 4 project locations and do something here. Staff has put time to design it. We think there is a benefit to having the sidewalk. We think we should try something with the traffic and the realignment. So with that, I'll stand for any questions from the council as you consider the award of those four pieces. And I think it's basically just the award of number 2 and 3 on this list going forward, because I assume the council would support the other ones listed.
Are there questions by council members for any of the items, especially the Creek Valley proposed realignment? could you put that graphic back up again? Thank you. It does strike me that, from living not too far from that neighborhood, that if you're coming, I'll call it northbound on Valley View, and you're trying to turn into Creek Valley, somebody's coming out of Creek Valley, it's a little bit tight getting in there, but it's not too bad. But when you're coming southbound, and there's always a lot of traffic on that road, especially in the afternoon, at least in the pre-COVID era, that we're getting off the regional roadway system, going around the roundabout and coming across on 66, or Valley Lane, and then getting on 66 and coming across. So I would think there'd be a little bit of danger in going southbound and wanting to turn into Creek Valley Road with that road configuration drawn the way it is. It might discourage people from turning in there, but it might also you might also end up inadvertently in a situation where people are getting rear-ended as they try to turn into their own neighborhood. So that's one of the things that worries me from the road alignment standpoint. I don't really understand the sidewalk opposition. It kind of gets you over to the regional trail. There's nothing on that side of the road that really helps you do that safely. What's the opposition for on the sidewalk? I'm having trouble understanding that.
It's the property impacts from these three individuals. They don't want a sidewalk in their front yard. It's the similar story we used to hear about sidewalks. Impacts the driveways, losing some grass, having that sidewalk along there. This would be one we would maintain because it is a municipal state aid. Just don't want people walking in their front yards. But I agree with you, Mayor. There's not an access for people on that west side of Valley View right now.
Yeah, this would get you safely to the church driveway, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Yep.
And then you can turn in on the driveway and walk right over and get on the regional trail, and you're there safely.
Exactly.
And they might argue there's no sidewalk further south on Valley View, but we do it a piece at a time.
Correct. And we could award just the sidewalk portion of this, and we would adjust it over here. If the council has concerns with the realignment, we could just do the sidewalk at this location.
That's kind of what I think, is that we got to keep working and talking about the roadway alignment, but I'd be in favor of the sidewalk. I think that should go in. That's a asset for anybody using the trail system. Other thoughts from council members?
Yes. Mayor?
Yes.
Hi. Yes, sir. For Director Milner, I would tend to reflect exactly what the mayor just said. I met with Fred Kellett over there, as you know, who's an engineer that did some work for the school district for a long time. If you could bring that overhead up there of the intersection of Valley View and Creek Valley Road, the area that I get concerned about here is with the change anticipated. You can see if you can zero in there at 5708, yes, right in there. Thank you. If that is extended, well, you can see the way Creek Valley Road kind of opens up as a funnel onto Valley View. And I do, when you go over there, it's very wide open, and I can see that there would be a tendency of traffic to make that turn and keep going. And what you're trying to do, if I understand it correctly, Director Milner, is to really kind of slow that down. But that little pie-shaped sector that gets caught right in here has my attention, because I know that when Public Works plows that street and comes back up, they're not going to be able to get in there with the extension. So we're either going to pile snow up, or you send a separate truck over, or it's up to the homeowner. And as that piles up there, I can see, as with the weather that we've been experiencing over the last several years, we get this kind of freezing, melting. Well, with the grade right there, I think that there's going to be a tendency to have a lot of ice in front of that driveway and also at the top of that grade. Now, that may not happen all the time, but I think it can happen enough. Now, what Mr. Kellett mentioned to me, and I haven't personally experienced that. What Mr. Kellett mentioned to me is that it's pretty typical when the school bus drops kids off, that there's somebody waiting right there at the top of Creek Valley Road, which narrows that at that time of day. So again, you have this kind of congestion. So, my wife had knee surgery, and we have grandchildren that occasionally play lacrosse down here at the lower fields. So I go up and down that to drop her off at the bottom so that she can walk in, and I go up, park on top, and then walk down. But what I notice is that the tendency there is to, if you slow down going as you make the turn, you'd have a tendency to accelerate a little bit as you go down, but mostly accelerating coming up. So I'm not sure that by extending that there, that we really cut down the issue with speed. And as you've noticed, I haven't compared the two petitions, but there was the earlier petition, which is the reason that this really came about, if I understand it. The earlier petition considered the speed issue there, and then as many of the residents there began to understand what would be occurring, they decided to kind of change their position, and that's why we have the second petition that was introduced tonight. So I too think that the sidewalk is, I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't want a sidewalk there. It's just that extension and the potential problem that it creates, and then I don't know that we're really solving the problem with speed. So we extend it, we cut down the angle, we have a maintenance issue, but it may not cut the speed, especially when going down and coming back up. Might it right at the top when you make the turn, but I don't know that it will later. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Other thoughts on these overall projects? And I would say I'm in favor of the other ones as recommended by Director Milner. It's just a matter of, for me, of dealing with this Creek Valley thing. Member Fisher?
I think we should just cut the corner, take that piece out, and leave the sidewalk. I think the sidewalk is, we have to continue to build sidewalks where they make sense for our community, and we can't necessarily take the vote of every person along the sidewalk. It's for the whole community. And but I think there's clearly not agreement on this street about that corner, and the neighbors have who really are there every day and watching it. And I think they've made a lot of points about perceived safety concerns. So I think we should just take that one out and do the rest.
All right.
Okay.
That people comfortable with that? And Director Milner, is that enough guidance for you?
Yep, I would just have you make a motion to award the contract without the realignment of Creek Valley Road, and we'll make sure to pull out any quantities and that stuff with the contractor. So we can handle that on our end if we just get that motion.
All right. So is there a movement? Movement. There is a movement. Is there a motion to, I need a little movement here after sitting all these hours. Is there a motion to approve the request for purchase for 2020 pedestrian, bicycle, and intersectional improvements with the Pembroke Companies, Inc. in the amount stated with the exception that we will not do the intersection improvements on Creek Valley?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Moved by Member Anderson, second by Member Fisher. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I just jump in?
Member Staunton.
I just want to take a minute to thank Director Milner. You're a man of extraordinary patience and perseverance and temperament. And thank you for continuing to try to figure out the right answer when nobody agrees on what the right answer is. And this isn't the only project, but we don't thank you enough. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Member Staunton, for that shout out.
Yes, ditto from me. That's absolutely true.
All right, roll call, please. Ms. Allison?
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. The motion as stated is approved. And that concludes that portion of the agenda. And on to correspondence and petitions. Is there anything that's come in, Manager Neal or Clerk Allison, that we need to be aware of? Other than what was in our packet?
Nothing more than that was in your
Okay,
packet.
all right. And then, Director Milner, we've got a couple of petitions you want us to receive as a council so you can get them into a study mode.
Yes, Mayor, we'll respond to the one that was part of this Creek Valley discussion. We'll respond to that directly to those residents. That's Mr. Fellett. And the other one, I think we'll probably be coming back to council at a later date.
Sure. But we'll just receive them for now and that'll get them into the study queue for your department. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Is there a motion to receive the resident petition for an all-way stop at the intersection of West 57th Street and Beard Avenue and forward that information to the engineering department for consideration?
So moved.
So moved by member Staunton,
Second.
second by member Brindle. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Member Clerk Allison.
Brindle.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. Next, we have a petition to preserve the Creek Valley View Road intersection. I wonder if we need this, and do you still want the petition received, Director Milner, in light of the fact that we agreed not to modify the entrance?
I think we should, just for the record.
The formal.
Yep.
All right, good. All right, is there a motion to receive the resident petition to preserve and not modify the entrance to Creek Valley Road as previously petitioned and planned, but extend the sidewalk to Creek Valley Road?
So moved.
You got a motion by member Brindle, second by member Fisher or Anderson.
Fisher.
All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motion's approved as stated. All right, we're on to aviation noise update. Member Brindle, anything for us?
Yes, I have one thing. And Director Bennerat or Manager Neal, I have a screen I'd like to put up if I may. Or if you would, please. I don't have it. You do. Please.
Will you please pull up that graphic for her?
So tomorrow evening, the NOC is hosting a listening session in Bloomington. Actually, it doesn't matter where it is because it's virtual. So the information that is hopefully going to display so that it gets put into the record is the Skype Connect information for the listening session that is from 6 to 7 tomorrow evening. This connection is available on the macnoise.com website. There it is. And the information is also going to be available in the city calendar. So tomorrow evening, 6 to 7, and there is the phone number and the conference ID to participate in the listening session that's taking place tomorrow evening. So that's what I have.
Oh, good. Thank you for doing that. Manager Neal, anything on airplane noise at all you want to add?
No, nothing for me.
Skies are pretty quiet.
They are.
Yep, skies will be pretty quiet for a while. People aren't flying the way they were before, and it'll be a long time. Delta thinks it will be probably 2023 before the airport is busy again.
Thank you. I guess. Tough deal.
Yes. Oh, to hear Brian Ricks give a report, which we did. It's like I think we're still down 90%. We were down 95% of traffic.
All right. Member Brindle, do you want to lead off on the council comments?
Sure. Let me get something up here. I have a couple things. First, I got an email from Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. Annette Kuiper, who is Director of Military Outreach, has received a generous donation from a roofing company, and they're looking for to roof 2 homes of military families. So I have the information here. I can provide it, but I did send this also to the Rotary Club of Minnesota Veterans, so they can help identify 2 veterans who need their roofs replaced. So it's a real nice donation to a military family. So 2 roofs for 1 each of 2 families. Then I want to thank the residents of the neighborhood around Hankerson. They've been really patient, and their discourse was polite, and also the residents in the Brookview Heights neighborhood, same. We actually wouldn't know what we know about the property at Dugan Plaza and Abercrombie without residents looking into it and having the wherewithal. Wade Tholen is a real estate person, so he knows how to navigate all those real estate files and documents. So thanks to him, we know more than we did before. And can better know how to navigate forward. Let's see here. So a curiosity, and that is that in the staff reports, like for some of the residential projects that we looked at, and even the apartment project on Valley View Road, I'm noticing that in the staff report, I'm not seeing the up-down vote of the Planning Commission members. And so there's a staff recommendation and there's information in the report, but it used to say how many people voted for and how many people voted against. And I'm not seeing that in the report, and I'm curious why. We heard from a resident who lives on Cornelia Circle, and I provided this information today to city staff, that people who are visiting Rosland Park and visiting the area are parking across the circle. And so he sent a photograph, and I looked at it and I thought, well, if somebody has an emergency who lives on Cornelia Circle, how's the ambulance going to get in? How's the fire truck going to get in? How's the police car going to get in? Because cars are parked from curb to curb across the middle of that circle. So I did call Chief, connected with Fire Chief Tom Schmitz and said, what does this look like to you? And so I think they're going to take a look at that, because I think there's some real issues with having cars parked all the way across in that circle, and it has to do with access for safety. So that's what I have.
Good. Thank you, Member Brindle. Member Staunton, I'm going across the top of the screen here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I wanted to just comment on tonight is, we're getting into an interesting rhythm here on our public hearings, and I think it's actually quite effective, and I would encourage us to think about continuing it if the day ever comes that we see each other in person again. I think that these public hearings where we take the input at one meeting and make the decision at the next meeting is really a good way to do this. It's produced really good comments from the interested parties, and it gives us a chance to simmer on it in a week or two afterwards before we have to make a decision. And I think that's a practice that we ought to consider retaining once we go back to in-person meetings. So that was the only thing I had.
All right, thank you. Member Fisher?
So I would just, my only comment is, about the public hearing we didn't have tonight, which is on the Dugan Plaza. And I don't know, I struggle, and Mayor, it sounds like you're going to talk a little bit about it tonight, but I struggle that, we get accused of sort of planning and secretly doing all this stuff and lack of transparency. And I actually think it's just the opposite problem. There's zero transparency. Transparency is not a problem, but like, our planning happens here. Our process is all out here. And sometimes that looks really awkward. And this time it's extremely awkward because it's like we stepped in a hornet's nest, not even knowing what we're stepping in because we're not sitting in a room somewhere planning it and thinking about that level. It all happens here. And I just struggle how we actually how we can help people understand that and how we can come forward in a different way, yet be fully transparent. And that may take a little, maybe some staff thinking about how we might, like the process we're just going through right now, how might we redo that if we were rethinking that whole piece, knowing that, in terms of our involvement, it is what it is. We have to have that discussion here. And I think we're anticipating some real community engagement, but, you have to take these initial steps. And maybe the problem was the initial step wasn't the right step. I don't know, but I'd be curious what the mayor's thinking about it.
All right. Thank you. Member Anderson?
Yeah, thank you. I guess, well, number one, I think that Member Staunton has a good thought there. The kind of a cooling off period after a public hearing makes sense to me. And and it also allows further thought on the part of the public and a way to weigh in that could be extremely useful in the long haul. And I don't want to pile on here onto the Abercrombie and Dugan Plaza site because I think that you're going to address it, Mr. Mayor. I do think that there was quite a bit of expressed disappointment from many in the neighborhood, and the mailings and the conversation and so on, but I'll defer that conversation to you because I know it's on your mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, here's what I'm thinking about. When I think we need to restate for some folks, and hopefully they'll watch this, the end of this meeting, some of the folks in the Brookview Heights neighborhood. When we had worked on this affordable housing issue, and we've done a lot of multifamily rental in conjunction with the Housing Foundation, from time to time we've asked them to look for opportunities where somebody could actually own a home. And so our affordable housing manager, Stephanie Hawkinson, went to work on that, and they found this one piece of property in our town that the city owned that they thought we could look at selling. And we went through some analysis of it at the HRA. And then I think when it came to the council, we said, well, let's hear what the neighbors have to say about it. Let's have some kind of a public hearing on this. And so what came about was, of course, the proposed vacation of the easement, but that required notice in a very narrow radius. I think it was a 500-foot radius, so it only hit like 4 homes. And then the idea of authorizing the sale of the city-owned land to the Edina Housing Foundation, I think so many people in Brookview Heights felt like they got totally blindsided. And even the people that did get notice only got 10 days notice. And so we follow the rules that we've established by ordinance in terms of the radius for notification. But in a situation like this, and I don't know how to predict it precisely in advance, where we're taking a city-owned piece of property and thinking about potentially selling it to a nonprofit for a housing purpose in this circumstance. And that piece of property has been used as a de facto park, pocket park in a neighborhood for, let's say, 60 years. It strikes me that we should have thought about, as a council, how do we want to give notice on this thing? And we should have told folks on the staff, you better notify the whole subdivision, because it's part of this subdivision, it's part of the historic entrance to the subdivision. So we did look, we relied on our GIS files, as I understand it. Manager Neal may have some more insight into this, but we totally missed the deed restriction when we just looked at it from a GIS standpoint. And then we proceed, and now we get ourselves in an awkward spot, and people are up in arms because they didn't feel like they got adequate notice, or the notice was cast far and wide enough to let people know in the subdivision. It results in what Member Fisher talked about, is distrust of government, distrust of us, the people that are closest to them, and trying to provide the leadership and the access that we think is important to provide and build that confidence level in local government. So it's really frustrating that we missed this because our GIS system was faulty. And we had to have one of our realtors in the neighborhood that I spoke to, I think it was last Thursday probably. And I said, gee, if these stories you're telling me have merit, can you get some research done? Can you find anything that looks like it would back up this sort of oral history that's taken place in Brookview Heights, that this was really parkland? And so he did quite a job in locating these deeds, locating a letter from the city attorney. Somebody else had tried to buy it in 1990, and he found this information. The city attorney had said, no, it's not saleable. Adverse effect on the neighbors that are adjoining, and then also more critically, probably, he indicated that there was a restriction against selling it because it was dedicated solely for parkland use. In fact, that's what the next door neighbor found out when he went to see if he could buy the property next door in 2004. Why he went and he found out it was parkland. Why he went back in 2008 again to see if he could buy it. I'm perplexed by it, since he found out it was parkland in 2004 and it was being used as a neighborhood park. But that's something that may come clearer over time. So I feel like in this situation, due process was really a problem, and we had the same problem up on Dublin Circle, where we don't get a chance to interact with the neighbors in a proper way, and they think that we're doing something without giving them the opportunity to be heard. And it's really bothersome when you're concerned about having everybody's voice heard, that we're a democracy and that everybody's voice should be heard and everybody's voice matters. So I don't know how we go about solving this problem or thinking it through a little bit better. But I could see where folks were upset about, out of the blue, they see that we're thinking about selling the city-owned land to even something as sort of neutral in a way as a housing foundation. Not a private developer, a nonprofit. So I just think it's something we need to think about. How are we going to avoid having this happen to us in the future? We just had it happen with Dublin Circle not that long ago, and that was difficult to get through and difficult to rebuild that trust. And now we've got some more trust building to do with this neighborhood. And if we're coming back on August 18th after you look at this deed restriction, and I know there's been at least one, I thought I saw one email when I was able to look quickly this afternoon from one of our residents who's an affordable housing advocate saying she checked with a lawyer and this deed restriction is only good for 30 years. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I think it's in a deed. It's not in an agreement like we had over at Centennial Lakes. It's in a deed, and I think it probably runs with the land, and I think it's probably permanent in nature. But if we're going to have staff come forward with the same sort of proposals that they had on this agenda, authorizing the sale of city-owned land to the Edina Housing Foundation and then a vacation at easement, then we better get way out in front of it and maybe even postpone it longer so that we can give everybody adequate notice that this is the direction we're heading. Because I don't want to have that same situation again. And I think every council member, I think maybe except Ron, I talked to that, or had some kind of dialogue with, that indicated they were getting a lot of calls from neighbors. We were talking about probably other things and just commenting on all the emails that were coming in. So that's, I don't know how we solve this issue, but I want to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure this doesn't happen again, and that people come to us knowing that we've done our best to give them good notice and that their voice does matter and their voice should be heard. that we give them time to think about it. Member Fisher.
Yeah, and there's one other point here that I had a lot of concern with, and that is, again, the very few, well, we talked about this twice, once in a work session briefly, where the topic was generated, and then in approving going to a public hearing to get some public input. And I just don't recall us talking about necessarily 2 housing units there. Our discussions were really about a parcel with a single family home that fits the character of the neighborhood. And I know that it came up through other sources, and I know Councilmember Brindle asked a question about it at our last council meeting in June, I believe. But I don't remember us ever saying we should try to put 2 houses there. And that was a lot of the anger that I was hearing as well, is like, wait a minute. You can't, and it feels like a lot of that stuff, and I guess it's always going to be the case where it gets out in front of us. But it feels like all of a sudden we're all not backtracking, but we're trying to explain things that we haven't put out there. And so I'm just not sure how you clean some of that up.
Yeah. The other, Member Staunton, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in whenever.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is all well and good, but I also think trust is a two-way street. We spend a lot of time in this, and we have a track record, if anybody looks, of listening when people raise concerns. And people found out about this and raised concerns, and here we are, and we're readjusting our thinking. So, it's fine to say that maybe this didn't happen in exactly the sequence we wanted it to happen, but we're trying to figure out the right answers on a lot of things here. And I think any of the people who talk to us would say to you that they heard people listening and trying to figure out the right answer. And so there's a lot of jumping to conclusions that there's an effort to do something untoward, and having a little bit of grace on the fact that people aren't going to get it exactly right every time is helpful on both ends of this. And the other thing I would say is that it's really important in this whole thing that we not chill the creativity of our staff. Stephanie in particular did some great creative work coming up with an idea that all of us endorsed. And my recollection, Mike, is that we were the ones who suggested maybe you could get 2 parcels on there in maybe the HRA meeting or another meeting. And so I want to be careful in this whole thing that, if we start kind of being too critical of the process ourselves, that we're sending the message to staff, just play it safe. Don't do anything creative. Don't try to figure out good answers. I mean, we should always try and do the best we can, but people should know we are trying to do the best we can. And if they watch what we're doing, they'll see that. And so I'll take the blame for whatever, I may have done to not earn that trust, but people also should cut us a little bit of slack.
Thank you for those thoughts. Member Fisher?
I actually thank you for that, Councilmember Staunton. I think that is well stated. And I do want to make sure that in no way am a lot of people were really attacking our staff. And I tried to make it very clear to them that, and some crazy ideas about, comparisons to this being like the way things are done in Chicago, backroom deals and staff are out, cutting down trees last year because they were trying to set up the site for a housing pad. All of these notions get going. And I actually, I wish people really understood how things really work, which is complete transparency, which is what we try to do. And we do need staff to put those ideas in front of us and not feel that, they're going to get beat up like that. So thank you for saying that. And I wish I would have made that clear a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't very articulate about it either, but my trust level in staff is very, very high. It's just that in this particular circumstance, and also in Dublin Circle, something didn't go quite right because of the way our processes are set up, our notification processes are set up. And this one has some real awkwardness to it too, because we could have theoretically transferred the land to the housing foundation. Then they could have come back to us with a proposal to put 2 homes on there. And it seems like that was something that maybe should have been addressed prior to a deed taking place, or a conditional sort of deed given. And it just created a lot of awkwardness about the process of what kind of control the council would have over this property that the city owned had it been saleable. And that would have also been a source of irritation at the next level, when the housing foundation would have come back to say, we think, it's a single family neighborhood, but we think we should put twin homes in there because it's a 102-foot wide lot. And that would have been another source of angst. That would have been good to have dealt with that at the beginning too, had we proceeded. And so I just say that as a cautionary sort of note, that if we come back and our city attorney says, no, you can go ahead and look at this issue in terms of its potential saleability, then I'd like to figure out a way to deal with that issue at the front end too, and I'm sure there's some creative thinking that can go on there.
It's always easier to bat 1,000 on the second try.
All right, well, that's kind of summarizes my experience on this. I do appreciate everybody else's thoughts on this. And frankly, why we were kind of musing about that idea of 2 homes there, I don't think anyone was really thinking about 2 houses or 2 homes on that property in a single family neighborhood. But regardless, I think we've drilled down on that subject long enough. Does anybody, I don't have anything else really tonight. Pleased that we're getting to go home at 10:20, but 10:30, I mean, but we got Manager Neal with a few issues he wants to talk about.
And I'll try to be brief, Mr. Mayor. Just to give you an update on our bonding bill item, we do have a $1 million appropriation for the South Metro Public Safety Training Facility is included in both the House and the Senate bonding bill. That's good. Of course, the bonding bill did not get passed in the most recent special session at the state legislature. And we anticipate they'll make another run at that in the middle of August sometime, and perhaps it'll get adopted then. We have some early intelligence that the governor is going to make an announcement tomorrow that is a statewide masking mandate. I don't know what the contents of that mandate are, but we're hearing from our kind of municipal lobbying sources that there's a big presser tomorrow and that the announcement is coming. And so we'll be prepared for that. It's been an interesting process here. We've shared our masking order with a lot of different communities, and Roseville is the most recent one that then put it into play. We have the number of complaints that we have been receiving has gone down significantly. The number of complaints we receive is almost all complaints asking us to more rigorously enforce the order, not complaints about having to wear masks. So that's been an interesting experience. We've had to issue one citation for a disorderly conduct of someone who didn't want to wear the mask, and some other issues that happened along with that. But that was one instance of that. Otherwise, we're seeing pretty good levels of compliance in most of the retail and grocery stores that where we're taking reports from. Finally, in this most recent special session at the legislature, there was a set of policing reforms that were passed last night. They've been described as robust and next to nothing, so somewhere in there, there's where the balance lies. We're studying them here at our police department and in the admin team, just to see from our position what we would have to change in our current operations to be responsive to the new police reform. So we're learning about that as we go. And that's all I've got to report tonight.
It was such a resounding report. You've left us speechless.
It was.
Sure that's not right.
It was related to the COVID dashboard, which I tend to think we're one of the few cities that has a COVID dashboard that's really well done. One of the folks in the Rotary meeting asked if we could provide on the dashboard information with respect to hospitalizations and people in ICU, their age range. We don't have that. We've got age range on contraction of the disease. We've had 465 odd people roughly contract COVID. And then I think we've had about 45 in the hospital, or presently in the hospital. I think it was like 13 in ICU. Could we provide information that would generally tell them the age brackets of the people that were in ICU and hospitalized as well, as opposed to just those that are contracting it?
So the information that is included in the dashboard or on the dashboard is the information that we receive from MDH, so Minnesota Department of Health. So if they are keeping that information, we can use it in our dashboard. But if they're not keeping that information, we don't have access to it. So I'll talk to Jeff Brown about that tomorrow, and we'll see. I'll see if we can do it.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question, and that would be some interesting data points, I think. Anything else, folks? Did you notice the time differential here for all of you that worked so hard tonight? We were supposed to be finished at 12:20. Of course, we had a couple items come off the agenda.
You can go ahead and take credit for that, but
no, I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just yeah. It would be nice if we could all have a drink together to celebrate getting out 2 hours early. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with all this time between now and midnight? Go back to work, I guess. Try to get some day job things done. Well, thanks, everybody. It was really, it did make me think about whether we ought to be skipping that first meeting in July. I'll tell you that. I looked at the agenda.
Covered a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. It was a great meeting you. Superb work by all of you, as usual.
You want a motion to adjourn?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Got a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Staunton?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. We stand adjourned.
Signing off.